Chapter 84. 84 They're not the murderers? The man and woman had defeated the 5 members of the body hunters. Zhen Shishir snorted disdainfully and walked toward the helicopter. Hao Ren shrugged and said with a pained expression, "That's right. I wanted to get along with you as an ordinary person, but I didn't expect to be alienated in return." With that, he strode toward the helicopter. However, at this moment, a few of the body hunters who lived nearby had rushed over. One of them even aimed a rocket launcher at the helicopter. Zhen Shishir frowned when she saw this. "You're courting death." As she spoke, she unzipped her leather jacket. 48 flying daggers suddenly floated out from the leather jacket. They flew toward the body hunter who was holding the rocket launcher. Puff, 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 puff. In almost an instant, the arms of the body hunter with the rocket launcher were dripping with blood. The other body hunters wanted to attack. However, the 48 flying daggers kept shuttling back and forth on their bodies. Puff, 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 puff. The sound of the sharp daggers piercing into flesh was heard. Moreover, this woman did not kill these body hunters directly. Instead, she let the 48 flying daggers cut through their limbs and bodies, making them suffer the pain of their bodies being cut. At this moment, a shadow in the distance flew toward them at an extremely fast speed. Whoosh! In almost 2 seconds, it had arrived in front of them. Hao Ren snorted when he saw this. He threw a punch at the shadow. Bang! That shadow was instantly blown apart by the explosion. A cloud of dark green smoke suddenly spread out in all directions. "Oh no, we've been tricked." Hao Ren quickly covered his nose. Zhen Shishir also held her breath. However, it was too late. Although the two of them had only inhaled one breath. However, their consciousness was gradually becoming blurry. It turned out that after the incident with the body hunters last time, the laboratory had set up a special project to develop a weapon to deal with hunters and psychokinesis. In the end, they developed this high-strength anesthetic bomb. As long as the anesthetic bomb exploded, hunters and psychokinesis inhaled the high-strength anesthetic inside the bomb would be anesthetized in just 10 seconds. Zhen Shishir fell to the ground in just 2 seconds. Hao Ren held on for 10 seconds, but in the end he couldn't hold on. He cursed, "It's hard to be a good person." He fell to the ground. After a moment he lost consciousness. It was not until then that the 2 hunters of the body hunters appeared. They took these 2 people. That afternoon almost everyone knew about this. Everyone in the entire base was burning with anger. They spontaneously came to the detention room where the 2 men were being held and cursed and roared. "These 2 fellows are definitely up to no good. Since they've been here It's this the gods' loss. They hurt the hunters and used throwing knives to cut the hunters' hands and feet instead of giving them a quick death. They're animals. He's just like Lun Yan and Lu Wang. Kill them. No, they're so cruel. They should be burned to death. Burn them. Burn them." Because of Lu Wang and Lun Yan, the people of Base C1 didn't trust outsiders very much. Now, the actions of these 2 people had finally ignited everyone's anger. In the end, it was Guojutao, the leader of the body hunters, who came. He persuaded everyone they've done such a thing. Everyone wants to kill them. I'm no exception. But there's a procedure for everything. This matter needs to be further interrogated to determine their guilt. Only then can they be punished. So everyone should go back first. When there's a result here, I'll inform everyone immediately. At first, everyone still didn't agree. But they still respected the leader of the body hunters. In the end, after more than 10 minutes of persuasion by Guojutao, everyone left. At this time, Mo Shi was walking step by step toward the detention center. No one knew how much anger Mo Shi needed to vent at this time. When he was only 1,000 meters away from the detention center, he had already spread out his telekinesis. He could clearly detect that Guojutao was personally interrogating the 2 people in the detention center. Hao Ren was really panicking at this time. He thought that with their strength they could do whatever they wanted in this base. But he didn't expect that they would be easily subdued by a strong anesthetic bomb. This base C1 could actually develop such a thing. It seemed that the base still needed a laboratory. As for Zhen Shishir, although she wasn't as panicked as Hao Ren, there was a trace of regret and panic in her eyes. Guojutao entered the detention center and looked at the 2 people who were tied up like dumplings. He said coldly, "Speak." Hao Ren shook his head repeatedly. "Leader, I can swear to God that we didn't do it." "Absolutely not." Guojutao snorted and said to the people outside, "Send this guy to the zombie farm to feed the zombies." Immediately, someone came in and dragged Hao Ren out. Outside the door, Hao Ren made a squeal like a pig being slaughtered. "What I said is true, leader." Guojutao didn't care at all. He looked at Zhen Shishir and said, "It's your turn." Jin Shirshi's face turned pale. At this time she no longer had the arrogance from before. She said with a trembling voice, "It's not us, we didn't do anything." "If you didn't do anything?" "Attacking a captain, mutated zombies escaped from the laboratory, zombies in the zombie farm broke free from the chains. Since you came, strange things have happened one after another. You're telling me it has nothing to do with you?" The woman in leather shook her head repeatedly. "It's really not us." Wu Jutao nodded. "Well, then I'll ask another question. You can't deny that you used a flying knife to hurt those zombie hunters. And you didn't kill them directly but tortured them cruelly with a flying knife. What can't a person like you do?" The woman in leather shook her head again. I didn't torture them, I just wanted to scare them away. Otherwise they would have been killed long ago." Wu Jutao obviously didn't believe this. He nodded. "Well, you still don't want to tell the truth? You'll be fed to the zombies later." About a kilometer away from the detention room, Mo Shi, whose heart was burning with rage, suddenly stopped in his tracks. After his telekinesis reached level 10, he could detect slight changes in people's brain waves. When people lie, the frequency of their brain waves will be slightly faster than when they tell the truth. When the man and woman were being interrogated just now, their brainwave frequency did not change at all from the usual while they were speaking. This was enough to show that what the two said was true. All the previous signs pointed to the two of them as the culprits. But now he suddenly found that these two people weren't the murderers. Mo Shi frowned. If it wasn't them, then who? If it wasn't them, who else could it be? Could it be that the clues were cut off here? Chapter 85. If these two people were not the murderer, then who could it be? Mo Shi frowned. He had been living a carefree life before. He rarely used his brain. At most, he would think about where to check in and how to get evolution points. When did he solve a case? But after a while he thought of someone. From the looks of it, Xiaodou was attacked, the mutated zombie escaped from the laboratory, and the zombie chain in the zombie farm was changed. These three things were very likely to be related. Then Xiaodou was the key person. Thinking of this, he immediately strode to the hospital. Xiaodou's injuries were more serious. Although a week had passed, he was still in the intensive care unit. Mo Shi came to Xiaodou's ward. The intensive care unit was not a place that anyone could enter. He told the nurse that Xiaodou was once his colleague. The nurse hesitated for a moment and asked the doctor. Finally she entered the ward and asked Xiaodou. Then she walked out and whispered to Mo Shi, "Don't let the patient speak. You only have 5 minutes." Mo Shi nodded and entered the intensive care unit. In the intensive care unit, a strong smell of medicine assailed his nose. The room was very quiet. Only the sound of the ECG monitor could be heard. Beep, beep, it was like a countdown to life. Mo Shi came to the bedside and saw that Xiaodou's eyes were tightly shut. He seemed to be in pain. He paused for a moment and said, "Xiaodou." When Xiaodou heard this, his eyelids trembled a few times and he opened his eyes. His eyes flickered and he seemed to be a little excited. He opened his mouth with difficulty. "I have been waiting for you." When he spoke, it was as if there was something stuck in his throat. It was uncomfortable to hear. Mo Shi nodded. "Go ahead." Xiaodou opened his mouth again with difficulty. "The person who injured me was not planning to attack me. He was planning to attack you." Mo Shi heard this and his eyes flickered. He looked at Xiaodou. This meant that Xiaodou took a bullet for him. He had always thought that Xiaodou was selfish and only cared about himself. He did not expect that he would take a bullet for him. Xiaodou's throat made a noise. He panted for a moment before continuing. "I may be selfish in small matters, but you are the guardian of the base. The base cannot live without you." Mo Shi looked at Xiaodou, his heart stirring slightly. "You saw the murderer?" Little Bean gasped for breath with difficulty and said, "His face was covered, but I am very sensitive to a person's body shape. As long as I see his figure, I will be able to recognize him." Mo Shi nodded. "When you recover tomorrow, I'll bring everyone in the base to you for you to recognize." His tone was filled with boundless dominance and ice-cold killing intent. That night, when Mo Shi signed in, he didn't sign any more enhancers. Instead, he signed 10 bottles of recovery potion. He had been too careless in the past. He believed that with his strength, there were very few things in the base that could hurt him. Therefore, they didn't pay much attention to the recovery potion. The effect of the recovery potion was too heaven-defying. It was impossible for him to casually give it to others. Hence, he did not have a lot of recovery medicine in stock, and he had already given Happy his last bottle during the day. But after this incident, Mo Shi understood. He still had to prepare a few bottles of recovery potion on a daily basis. Although he might not be able to use it himself, and he was not a saint who would casually give it to others. But he could not guarantee that under special circumstances he would use it to save the lives of key people. Just like now. Emosher did not delay. After getting the recovery potion, he immediately rushed to the hospital. However, when he was more than 900 meters away from the hospital, he suddenly felt that something was not right. He spread out his psychokinesis. In an instant, everything within a radius of 1,000 meters had nowhere to hide. Sure enough, he detected a figure near the flower bed behind the hospital's inpatient department building. Moreover, this person was a psychokinesis. He was controlling a throwing knife to fly toward the window on the second floor. And that window was the window of Xiao Dou's intensive care unit. When Emosher saw this, the killing intent in his eyes appeared again. The berserk pressure instantly pressed down on him. The black figure only felt as if there was an overwhelming pressure around him that pressed down on him. His psychokinesis was suppressed back into his body in an instant. The throwing knife fell into the flower bed under the window. He was shocked in his heart. His eyes were full of panic and he hurriedly tried to escape. However, the next moment, Emosher's figure crossed more than 900 meters in an instant and was already in front of him. In the place where Emosher just stood, under the moonlight, there was only a 10-meter-tall and 30-meter-long dragon shadow left. After a while, the shadow slowly dissipated. When the black figure saw Emosher suddenly appear, he was even more terrified. He obviously knew Emosher's strength and knew that in front of Emosher, he had no chance of escaping at all. Emosher's eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. Speak. He only spat out this word that was as cold as a knife. The black figure's face was terrified, but he shook his head. No. I can't. Before his voice died away. He felt a violent and unparalleled psychokinesis rush into his brain in an instant. The next moment his brain went blank. His whole person was stunned on the spot. There was no longer any fear on his face. He looked around foolishly. Just like a fool. This was the skill that Emosher had signed in, memory plunder. With an unparalleled psychokinesis, he could forcibly plunder other people's memories. And the intelligence of those who had their memories plundered would be greatly reduced in an instant, or even directly become an idiot. In Emosher's mind there were many more memories. From these memories he saw the person who issued the mission to psychokinesis. It was a man wearing a black mask and camouflage clothes. The man with the black mask had a rough voice. He said, "I didn't expect that after we carefully arranged so many clues to lead him to those two people, he still saw through it. We were careless and didn't kill the captain in advance. Go tonight and kill the captain." Emosher saw the masked man's figure from the memory of psychokinesis. For him, who was at level 10 psychokinesis, his sensitivity to the figure was far beyond that of ordinary people. Next, he just needed to find this person in the base. Then he would be able to find the real culprit behind the scenes. At this moment, psychokinesis, who had already become a fool, slowly moved his feet. He walked into the distance unconsciously. Emosher moved his psychokinesis. Bang, there was a soft sound. That person's head suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. These people, no matter who they were targeting, they had almost killed him. Then they didn't even have the right to be fools. There was only one result for them. Death. Emosher didn't pay attention to his corpse. With a leap, he had already arrived at the window on the second floor. He pushed open the window and entered the room. In the room, the nurse who accompanied Xiao Dou was taking a nap. Xiao Dou was also sleeping. Emosher took out a bottle of recovery medicine. He opened Xiao Dou's mouth and poured it down his throat. Then he jumped out of the ward. He spread out his psychokinesis and explored an area with a diameter of 2 kilometers. With light footsteps, he rushed out of the hospital like a black light with endless murderous intent. Chapter 86. In the base, under the moonlight. Emosher was like a black shadow that carried boundless killing intent as he flashed past at high speed. Although he did not see the masked man's face from the memory he plundered, he remembered his figure. As a level 10 psychokinesis, he could detect fingerprints. He was even more sensitive to the figure. Ordinary people's perception of the figure was at most the overall impression of height, weight, age, gender, and so on. But psychokinesis could split these overall impressions into countless parts. How wide the shoulders were, how tall the person was, and how much he weighed. How big his ears were, how far apart his legs were, how long his feet were, and how long his fingers were. Psychics only needed to use their psychic power to scan the area, and they would be able to tell what was going on. And Emosher's telekinesis had reached level 10, which was even more exaggerated. As long as he swept with his telekinesis, he could clearly see how many eyebrows there were. Therefore, to ordinary people, this small difference was as conspicuous as the brilliant sun in his eyes. In addition to his telekinesis radius of 1,000 meters, the diameter was 2,000 meters. He jumped forward at a speed of 190 meters per second. His whole body was like a radar scanning a diameter of 2,000 meters, moving forward quickly. Not a single person in the base could hide from his mind. With his speed, it would only take him 10 minutes to sweep the entire base. When Mo.'s scan reached the 5th minute, in the hospital's intensive care unit, Little Bean, who was sleeping, suddenly opened his eyes. Then he felt something strange in his body. There was no longer the strange feeling in his throat. The wound near his heart no longer hurt. He could even feel that his body was full of power. In surprise, he touched the wound on his chest. There was no pain. He quickly tore the gauze on his chest. There was no wound on his chest. It had long been completely healed. Looking at the intact skin on his chest, his eyes widened. Before he went to sleep, he was half dead. He even doubted if he could ever recover. But when he woke up, his body had completely recovered. Even if he experienced it personally, he still could not believe it. What was going on? Could it be the mysterious powerhouse? Yes, it must be him. During the day, the mysterious powerhouse came. And at that time he had said, "When you recover tomorrow." He recovered by himself at night. Was definitely him. Apart from the mysterious expert, he could not think of anyone else. This made him even more amazed by the mysterious expert's ability. Previously, he only knew that the mysterious expert was very strong, so strong that it was unbelievable. But now, he realized that the mysterious expert was not only powerful, but also had such a strange ability. He was able to recover from his serious injuries in just a few hours. To put it in an exaggerated manner, this was simply akin to regenerating flesh and bones from the dead. How could the mysterious expert be so strong? Thinking of this, he jumped off the bed, went to the closet next to him and took out his clothes. He tore off the hospital gown and threw it aside. After changing into his own clothes, he immediately felt much more comfortable. The mysterious expert had said that when he recovered, he would bring everyone to him so that he could identify the murderer. Therefore, he had to be prepared in advance. The nurse who was dozing off next to him was awakened by the noise made by Xiaodou. He was instantly shocked. Who is it? She thought that someone else had broken into the room. And the light in the room was dim, so she could not see clearly at all. Xiaodou replied, "It's me. It's all Xiaodou." The nurse did not believe it at all. Little Bean looked like he was on the verge of death. How could it be him? She hurried to the door of the ward. He cried out in fear, "Someone come quickly, save me, save me." Suddenly, the people on the entire floor were awakened by her sharp cry for help. 2 doctors on duty and more than a dozen nurses all ran out. The nurse looked back at the figure in the room and shouted, "Someone broke into the ward. Hurry, hurry!" Everyone was shocked and hurried to the door of the ward. A male doctor wearing glasses strode into the room and slapped the light switch. He shouted to the others, "Protect the patient." As he spoke, he picked up the chair next to him and faced the figure. The others also rushed into the room and went to the bedside. This person broke into the ward in the middle of the night and was likely to harm the patient. However, the other doctor saw that there was no one on the bed except for the bedding. He immediately exclaimed, "Where is he?" Everyone also looked at the bed. Sure enough, there was no patient on the bed. Then everyone looked at the intruder. "What did you do to the patient?" the male doctor wearing glasses questioned angrily. But halfway through his words he suddenly stopped. Everyone else was also stunned at this moment. What was going on? They just felt that this person was very similar to the patient. But in a hurry they did not have time to take a closer look. Now that they looked at it, this person was more than just similar to the patient. They were exactly the same. The biggest similarity was that they were both cross-eyed. Xiaodou was a little embarrassed at this moment and said, "Well, it's me, Xiaodou." Everyone's eyes widened when they heard this sentence. The accompanying nurse looked at Little Bean from head to toe in surprise and asked tentatively, "What's wrong? Are you really Captain Xiaodou?" Xiaodou smiled bitterly and said, "Who else could it be other than me? I'm really sorry to scare everyone. Sorry." When everyone heard him admit it and saw the hospital gown thrown aside by him, they were all in disbelief. Is he really Captain Xiaodou? What's going on? Especially his attending doctor and accompanying nurse. Both of them looked at Xiaodou as if they had seen a ghost. They knew their patient best. Only 3 hours ago he was still in a critical period. He could lose his life at any time. But when he woke up he was alive and kicking. Could it be any more exaggerated? Xiaodou wanted to explain, but he could not think of any words after thinking for a long time. In the end he could only honestly say, maybe, the mysterious strong man saved me. When everyone heard this, instead of being relieved, they were even more surprised. Do you mean that the mysterious strong man is a doctor? A doctor with great medical skills? He has been hiding in our hospital all this time? Xiaodou smiled bitterly and said, I don't know. In short, I think it should be the mysterious strong man. I can't think of any other explanation except for him. The male doctor wearing glasses said in shock. The most important thing now is to do a comprehensive examination of your body. Nurse Lee, go and invite the dean here. We must let the dean know about this. Nurse Lee was the nurse who screamed just now. She nodded quickly in surprise. Okay, I'll go now. With that she squeezed through the crowd and walked outside. Her footsteps were extremely fast and she went far away. She was wearing flat shoes but she walked with the momentum of high heels. A moment later in the courtyard, Nurse Lee's scream came again. Ah. Chapter 87. Ah. In the hospital's courtyard, Xiao Li's sharp scream was like a sharp blade, cutting through the night sky. Everyone in the ICU felt a chill run down their spines. What happened to Xiao Li this time? They hurried downstairs and came to the courtyard. Then they saw a headless body lying in the courtyard. Everyone was shocked. This is psychokinesis. Quick, call the hunter group. If it was psychokinesis, the hunter group couldn't do it. They could only call the hunter group. Soon, the members of the hunter group were invited over. After carefully inspecting the scene, they found 11 throwing knives on the headless body. Then they found a 12th throwing knife in the flower bed downstairs of the inpatient department. This person is psychokinesis, a member of the hunter group said. The other person frowned and said, and the way he was shot in the head also seems to be psychokinesis. Then the two of them looked at each other. There was a hint of awe in their eyes. The dean next to them asked, do you know who the murderer is? The two of them didn't say. They only said, this matter needs to be further investigated. Then they asked someone to take the body back. The two members of the hunter group had probably guessed who did it. There were only 2 psychokinesis in the entire base. One was the woman in base C2. But she was now in the detention room and had been injected with a drug that could suppress her psychic power. She couldn't escape at all, let alone kill anyone. The other was the mysterious powerhouse. But they had seen the mysterious powerhouse's methods. He blew up the head without saying anything. He tore people apart without saying anything. Just thinking about it made their scalps tingle. Of course, they didn't dare to say it in public. This matter had to be decided by the leader. At the same time, Emosher finally stopped after sweeping through half of the base. His psychic power fell under the water tower. There was a room under the water tower. There was only one person in the room. This person was pacing back and forth. Obviously he was waiting for a reply. This person's figure completely overlapped with the figure in the memory he had just plundered, whether it was the whole body or a part of it. At this moment he was not wearing a mask. However, Emosher was 100% sure that he was the masked man in psychokinesis's memory. He took a step forward. Rumble, the door of the room, which had been reinforced with steel plates, flew out of the room. The tables, chairs and cabinets in the room were smashed into pieces. That person was startled and hurriedly spread out his telekinesis. However, very quickly, his telekinesis seemed to be suppressed by a huge mountain. It was instantly suppressed back into his body. He looked up in shock. There was already a person standing in his room. This person looked to be in his 20s. His camouflage uniform had already turned black. His eyes were filled with cold killing intent. Emosher's cold gaze swept over this person. The water tower was located in Area F, which was quite far from the zombie farm. Emosher had come here a few times in the past 7 or 8 years just to sign in. However, after discovering that the water tower could only produce a few bottles of water at most, he never came again. Who would have thought that old Zhang the water tower was actually a psychokinesis? And he had been hiding it all this time. Emosher's voice was cold. Speak, who ordered you to do this? Old Zhang looked at Emosher and retreated, shaking his head. I don't. In the next moment his voice abruptly stopped. An enormous amount of telekinesis had already surged into his brain. And his memories were instantly plundered. His brain was also severely damaged. His mind was blank. He was also dumbfounded on the spot. Emosher checked these memories. Soon he confirmed another person. He did not hesitate at all. He turned around. With light footsteps he rushed out of the room. At the same time, old Zhang, who was like a fool, also had his head explode with a bang. The room was not big to begin with, and the walls and floor were covered in blood. The headless corpse fell straight to the ground. The furniture debris on the ground was smashed into the air. Mo Shi recalled the figure of the person he had just seen in old Zhang's memory. He compared it to everyone in the base that he had just scanned. Soon he confirmed who it was. He strode towards the garbage incinerator in Area C. A group of patrolling members only saw a black shadow approaching from afar at a fast speed. Before they could react, it brushed past them. Then it flew into the distance. Their hearts trembled. Not good, there's an attacker. However, they did not have time to inform the others. They felt their heads swell, their vision went black, and they fainted one after another. At this moment, Mo Shi was in a hurry to track down the mastermind behind the scenes. He would not allow anything to hinder his investigation. Soon, from the garbage incinerator, Mo Shi followed the clues and found the sewage treatment plant in Area W, the farm in Area N, and the cafeteria in Area S. These people were very cunning. Basically, they had one-way connections. And these people were all psychokinesis. Although their telekinesis was not high, at most level 2 psychokinesis. But there were so many psychokinesis in the base and they were all hidden and never exposed. Obviously, there must be someone or some force behind them. But this force was hidden so deeply in the base. It was really strange. However, Mo Shi did not think about this at all. With such a domineering skill like memory plunder, no matter what strength you had, no matter how deep you hid, you could follow the clues and find out. Only 25 minutes had passed since he left the hospital, and Mo Shi had already found more than 30 hidden psychokinesis. In the end, he finally found a key person in the memories of a repairman. He saw that the person was wearing a wide bamboo hat. Under the shadow of the bamboo hat, his face could not be seen clearly. He always had his arms crossed, and in his arms was a slender sword about 1.5 meters long. He looked like a Jianghu hero. From the memories of others that he had obtained before, he often heard the word hero. Obviously, this hero was the mastermind behind the scenes. After receiving this information, Mo Shi turned his head. He instantly left the repair field. His telekinesis covered a diameter of 2,000 meters, searching for the hero's figure. At the same time, the hunter group had also received the news. In just 20 minutes they had found 3 headless corpses. And 5 unconscious patrols. The leader, Guojutao, frowned. He had already guessed that this was very likely the work of the mysterious powerhouse. But what was the reason for this? Although the mysterious powerhouse was powerful and ruthless. But he had never killed for no reason before. He thought of what happened today. He thought of the zombies that suddenly ran out of the zombie farm and almost bit the mute girl. It seemed that he must have angered Mo Shi. With his understanding of Mo Shi, even if he was angered, he would not casually kill unrelated people. It seemed that he must have found something. Chapter 88. Midnight. The bright moon hung high in the sky. Other than the few people on night watch, almost everyone else in the hunting group was mobilized. They all knew that something big would definitely happen tonight. At the same time, Mo Shi had already used his telekinesis to scan the entire base. However, he didn't find anyone similar to that chivalrous man. Could it be that that person wasn't in the base? However, after thinking about it for a moment, Mo Shi thought of 2 possibilities. Since that chivalrous man often had to command these psychokinesis, then he couldn't stay outside the base. The reason why his telekinesis couldn't detect them was because they were hiding underground. Now, Mo Shi's telekinesis could penetrate buildings. But there was a limit. If they hid dozens of meters underground, his telekinesis couldn't penetrate. And in the entire base there were 2 such places. One was an emergency shelter. At first, the emergency shelter was to avoid nuclear bomb attacks. The depth and thickness were naturally needless to say. The other was the laboratory. In order to prevent the virus from leaking out, the other 9 floors of the laboratory were built underground except for the 1 floor on the ground. Mo Shi wasn't far from the laboratory at this time. He immediately tapped his feet lightly. In a moment he had already arrived outside the laboratory door. Without any hesitation he was about to blast open the laboratory door. However, at this moment, roar! In the laboratory a beast-like roar came out. In the next moment the laboratory door was blasted out from inside. It smashed straight towards Mo Shi. Mo Shi's telekinesis moved slightly, and the door deviated from its trajectory. It flew past his side. It smashed into a tree 50 meters away. Crack! The tree immediately let out a crisp sound and was broken in the middle. At the same time, from the laboratory door, 23 tall shadows jumped out in a row. Each shadow was more than 3 meters tall. There were barbs on their shoulders. Some of their arms turned into 100-meter-long tentacles. Some of their arms turned into biochemical shields that were taller than a person. Some of their bodies were covered in thick plate armor. They were all mutated zombies. Roar, roar, roar. The man-made mutated zombies in these laboratories were much stronger than the mutated zombies in the wilderness. Such a man-made mutated zombie could probably reach the strength of a level 10 zombie hunter. However, it was clear that Emosher had underestimated the strength of these zombies. They roared furiously and charged towards Emosher. Based on their speed and strength, Emosher had judged that the strength of these mutated zombies was much stronger than the two he had seen before. Every single one of them was probably a level 8 or level 9 hunter. At the same time, a figure slowly walked out from the entrance of the laboratory. Under the moonlight, the figure was wearing a bamboo hat. He crossed his arms in front of his chest. In his arms was a long and narrow sword. Swordsman. He finally showed his face. At the same time, the patrol team and the corpse hunting team in Area A heard the commotion and rushed over. When they saw more than 20 mutated zombies, they were all dumbfounded. In the past, when a mutant zombie ran out of the laboratory, they couldn't do anything. But now, so many of them had appeared. Wouldn't it be over if the hunting group didn't come over as soon as possible? But just as they were panicking, the hunting group had already arrived. The leader, Guojutao, saw the situation at the entrance of the laboratory. He also saw Emosher. But tonight, Emosher was different from before. In the past, Emosher always gave people a feeling of being calm and natural, standing aloof from worldly affairs. But tonight, Emosher seemed to have an incomparably dense murderous aura. Under this strong murderous aura, Emosher didn't seem to have any intention of hiding. He seemed to want everyone to know that if they provoked him, they would die. Seeing this, Guojutao waved his hand to the group members who had rushed over behind him. He signaled them to step back. All the group members were stunned. More than 20 mutated zombies ran out and they didn't care? What's more, these zombies were rushing towards the figure under the moonlight. They didn't want to save this person? Guojutao stared at the group members and said, "That person, it won't be a problem to deal with these zombies." Everyone was stunned. Was this a joke? Their hunting group might not be able to deal with more than 20 man-made mutated zombies. That person could do it? How could they understand the leader's painstaking efforts? In the eyes of the leader, Guojutao, the mysterious strong man Emosher, was full of violent murderous aura. It was likely that he would attack with all his strength. With Emosher's strength, if he attacked with all his strength, just the aftermath alone could easily kill the hunting group members. If these group members really went up, wouldn't they be courting death? At this time, those mutated zombies, when more than 20 meters in front of Emosher, actually separated and formed a circle. They surrounded Emosher in the middle. The zombies even began to talk about tactics. But they didn't immediately attack Emosher. Instead, they stood quietly. They seemed to be waiting for some order. The swordsman spoke. His voice was changed and it was very hoarse. It was as if he had smoked too much. "I knew you would find out sooner or later, but I didn't expect it to be so fast." As expected of the mysterious strong man, Emosher's murderous eyes looked coldly at the swordsman at the door of the laboratory. The swordsman saw that Emosher didn't speak, so he spoke again. "These mutated zombies, each of them has reached the strength of a level 9 hunter. And one of them has reached the strength of a level 10 hunter. I didn't have the chance to test their combat strength before, but today I met you, the mysterious strong man, so I can test it." Then he waved his hand. The 23 mutated zombies suddenly roared. They all rushed towards Emosher. The weapons in their hands, sharp blades, claws, spears, whips, tentacles. Almost at the same time they attacked Emosher. Every weapon that was thrown out carried unparalleled power, and the sound of wind whistling could be heard. Guojutao, who was in the distance, saw the attacks of these mutated zombies and couldn't help but tremble. The group members behind him all felt a chill in their hearts. If it were them, they wouldn't even be able to take one hit from such an attack. The speed was too fast and the strength was too strong. As the figure said, they had reached the strength of a level 9 hunter. One of them had even reached the strength of a level 10 hunter. It held a 3-meter-long giant sword in its hand. In just one step it came in front of Emosher. The giant sword in its hand was like thunder. It slashed towards Emosher. This time the power was extremely terrifying. When the sword was in the air, there was a faint flame. It was conceivable that if it hit, even a level 10 hunter might not be able to withstand it. The members of the hunting group in the distance were all shocked by what they saw. These mutated zombies were too strong. If their hunting group went up, they would probably be wiped out today. However, the giant sword in the hand of the mutated zombie had just reached Emosher. Rip, there was a crisp sound and blood splattered. The mutated zombie with the giant sword was instantly torn into several pieces. Its huge head spun in the air. Chapter 89. Rip, there was a crisp sound of cloth being torn apart. The mutated zombie that was as strong as a level 10 hunter was torn into pieces in an instant. Blood splattered under the moonlight. The light reflected off the blood was a wine-red color. The members of the hunter group gasped when they saw this scene from afar. Someone said, "This is the mysterious powerhouse. It really is the mysterious powerhouse. I think I know him. He's Emosher from our zombie farm in Area A." The members of the hunter group who had been to Base C9 before, even if they knew that Emosher was the mysterious powerhouse, couldn't help but gasp. The last time they saw this scene, they were at the entrance of the hunter group's headquarters. But the strongest person that the mysterious powerhouse tore apart was only a level 5 hunter. But now he could use his telekinesis to tear apart mutated zombies that were as strong as level 10 hunters. In other words, all hunters below level 10 including level 10 hunters. In front of him, they were all ants that he could tear apart easily. The mysterious powerhouse's strength was insane. At the entrance of the laboratory, Vigilante was stunned when he saw this scene. The strength of the mysterious powerhouse's telekinesis was far beyond his imagination. However, there was no panic in his eyes. Instead, he looked at Emosher with interest. In the next moment, the 22 mutated zombies came to within 5 meters of Emosher at almost the same time. Their weapons were less than half a meter away from Emosher. But, rip, almost at the same time, all 22 mutated zombies were torn into pieces. Broken limbs flew and blood splattered. At the same time, along with the flying pieces, 22 clouds of dark green smoke exploded around Emosher. Bang 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 bang. In just a moment, Emosher was enveloped by the smoke. Vigilante's hoarse voice came from the entrance of the laboratory. "I knew that you would tear these zombies apart in your anger." So, except for the first mutated zombie, every other mutated zombie was stuffed with more than 10 strong anesthetic bullets. Even a level 10 hunter wouldn't last more than 3 seconds under so many tranquilizer bullets. What do you think of the effect? Everyone in the hunter group saw this scene from afar. They were all worried for the mysterious powerhouse. The man and woman from Base C2 were easily taken care of by a single anesthetic bullet. Now, with 22 anesthetic bullets, even the mysterious powerhouse would die. After all, anesthetic bullets were originally developed to deal with hunters and psychokinesis. Although they didn't know who the person at the entrance of the laboratory was, he was definitely not a good person to release so many mutated zombies to deal with the mysterious powerhouse. And if something happened to the mysterious powerhouse, who could deal with him? However, a moment later, when the large cloud of dark green smoke was blown by a gust of wind, everyone's gazes focused. Under the moonlight, Emosher's figure stood there. He was motionless. Killing intent spread out from his body. At the entrance of the laboratory, seeing this, the chivalrous man's eyes finally revealed a trace of panic. He thought of all kinds of accidents. But he didn't expect that the mysterious powerhouse wasn't even afraid of anesthetic bullets. One had to know that these strong anesthetic bullets had been specially processed. The amount of drugs in each anesthetic bullet was enough to easily anesthetize a level 10 hunter. Now, with 22 anesthetic bullets, the mysterious powerhouse didn't show any signs of being anesthetized. This was simply inhuman. Of course, he didn't know that Emosher had a recovery potion. The recovery potion was extremely effective. It could restore stamina, heal wounds, and remove toxins in one. It could even beautify the skin, delay aging, remove crow's feet, and remove melasma. Even if he was hit by so many anesthetic bullets, he only needed a bottle of recovery potion. He would recover in a moment. At this moment, Emosher's telekinesis spread out. It pressed down on the vigilante. However, he found something strange when his telekinesis pressed down. This person's body was emitting a strange telekinesis that resisted Emosher's pressure. At the same time, the long sword in his hand was unsheathed. He used his telekinesis to control this long and narrow sword and stabbed it toward Emosher. Although there was only one long sword, it gave people the feeling that it was 100 times sharper than the other psychokinesis flying knives. Under the moonlight, the long sword flashed coldly. Almost instantly, it was in front of Emosher. Mo had already detected that the telekinesis output from this person's brain was at most level 5 psychokinesis. But under his bamboo hat was a special metal ring. And with the help of this metal ring, this person's telekinesis was greatly enhanced. Could actually reach level 9 or even level 10. Mo had heard the people in the laboratory talk about the brainwave amplification device, when he had nothing to do. It seemed that this metal ring was that thing. That person's eyes were filled with determination. That long sword, under the control of his level 10 telekinesis, was extremely fast. It even broke through the speed of sound and created a sonic boom. Seeing this scene, the hunters in the distance all sucked in a breath of cold air. If that sword attacked them, none of them would be able to block it. Even the genetic martial arts of the hunters would not be able to. However, Mo only retracted his telekinesis. The telekinesis that had spread to a diameter of 2,000 meters suddenly gathered into a beam. It went straight for the chivalrous man. Just imagine, a huge amount of telekinesis within a diameter of 2,000 meters was gathered together at this moment. How terrifying would that be? Under the impact of this torrent-like telekinesis, that long sword that seemed to be able to split mountains and seas was almost instantly broken into more than a dozen pieces. And each piece was crushed into scrap metal by the huge telekinesis. The torrent-like telekinesis continued to rush forward. Seeing this, the chivalrous man's expression changed. He originally thought that by using the brainwave amplification device and forcefully raising his telekinesis to level 10, he would be able to fight against the mysterious expert. In the end, he realized that his thoughts were simply laughable, although they were both level 10. But telekinesis of the same level was also divided into strong and weak. How could his telekinesis, which was forcefully raised, be compared to Mo's telekinesis that was strengthened through the brain cell enhancer? How could a firefly compete with the bright moon? Mo's torrent-like telekinesis actually blasted on his body as if it was solid. That person was instantly sent flying. He directly crashed into the laboratory door and through several walls behind him. Out of the laboratory. He flew more than 300 meters away. Only then did he fall to the ground. A cloud of blood mist suddenly spat out from his mouth. He was extremely shocked. Telekinesis could actually have such a powerful impact. But in the next moment, the shock in his eyes turned into pain. Extreme pain. In the past, when Mo dealt with psychokinesis, he only suppressed their telekinesis back into their bodies. But this time he directly crushed this person's telekinesis. Suppression and crushing were two completely different concepts. Suppression meant that although the telekinesis was suppressed back into the body, it was still intact. And crushing meant that Mo's telekinesis directly rushed into the other party's brain. It destroyed the other party's brain cells that could produce telekinesis. It forcibly destroyed this person's telekinesis. 300 meters away, that person only felt a buzzing sound in his brain. In the next moment, there was an intense pain in his head. It was so painful that he couldn't stand up at all. He held his head with both hands, kept rolling, twisting and screaming. Mo moved his telekinesis, lifted this person up and moved him in front of him. His eyes looked straight at this person. In his cold eyes, murderous intent was revealed. Even in extreme pain, that person could feel that he was enveloped by murderous intent. He said with difficulty, "No, don't kill me. I mean no harm." Crack. Mo moved his telekinesis. The bamboo hat on his head was directly torn into two pieces and flew far away. Under the bamboo hat, a face appeared. A woman. This woman was very beautiful. She had cherry lips, slender legs and a ponytail. In the distance, a few people in the hunting group saw this face and couldn't help but exclaim, "Captain Ma." Chapter 90. Under the moonlight. The person who was suspended in the air by Mo's telekinesis had his large bamboo hat torn off. The next moment, a woman's face was revealed. It was a very beautiful face. The most eye-catching thing was that after her bamboo hat fell off, her ponytailed hair fell down from the back of her head. Seeing this scene, a member of the hunting group suddenly exclaimed, "That's right. Leader Ma." This person turned out to be Ma Wei, Leader Ma, who had pretended to be a mysterious powerhouse a few years ago. She was seen through and left the base later. Her nickname was Sister Ponytail. Recognizing Sister Ponytail, the members of the hunting group were all in disbelief. Leader Ma had left for several years. She was alone in the wilderness. Everyone thought that she had died a long time ago. They did not expect that she would appear in the base's laboratory. And she had such powerful strength. She could even control mutated zombies. But why did she want to be an enemy of the mysterious powerhouse? Everyone racked their brains but could not figure this out. Only Emosure was a little surprised. As early as the moment he saw this mysterious powerhouse, his telekinesis had already detected that it was a woman. He just did not expect this woman to be Sister Ponytail. However, no matter who it was, if they dared to provoke him, there would only be one outcome: death. At this moment, Sister Ponytail was still holding her head in pain and struggling. She said with difficulty, "Wait, don't kill me. I have something to say." However, in the next moment she felt that her mind was blank. There was no fear in her eyes. There was only the constant pain in her head. At this moment she had become an idiot without any intelligence. Emosure would not give her any chance. He would not talk nonsense with her, not even a word. No matter what reason you had, since you almost killed Happy, your ending was already set. As for what you had to say, there was no need. Emosure checked Sister Ponytail's memory in his mind. It turned out that after Sister Ponytail left the base, she wandered alone in the wilderness. At that time she was a level 4 psychokinesis. When she encountered mutated beasts and mutated zombies, she could deal with them. Over time, through continuous fighting, her telekinesis quickly increased and reached level 5. Furthermore, her psychokinesis had mutated. The mutated psychokinesis could stimulate other people's brain cells and cause them to suffer from psychokinesis. This was also the reason why Emosure noticed a lot of psychokinesis tonight. At the same time, she could also control the thoughts of the person whose psychokinesis was triggered by her. Psychokinesis that Emosure had found out about was naturally controlled by her. After obtaining these abilities, she felt that these abilities would be useful to the base, so she quietly returned to the base and found her uncle, Chief Mayangshur. At that time, Mayangshur was preparing to restart Project X, and Project X required the use of psychokinesis. He arranged for her to enter the laboratory. Now, Project X had been preliminarily completed. With her powerful telekinesis, she could already control these man-made mutant zombies. It was also at this time that her uncle, Mayangshur, told her to take care of the mysterious expert. Uncle didn't say why, but she could guess what her uncle meant. He remembered that more than 10 years ago, when the residents of E District were in chaos, they had once extracted the blood of a mysterious powerhouse. After laboratory research, they found that the genes in the blood had a lot of powerful abilities. Powerful self-healing ability, terrifying strength, and even the ability to regenerate broken limbs. Especially the ability to restrain Virus X. As for beautifying and delaying aging, it was needless to say. At that time, her uncle had said that if they could obtain more blood of the mysterious powerhouse for research, then the genes of the entire base's human population could be upgraded to a higher level. Everyone would be as powerful as the mysterious powerhouse. At that time, it would be easy to restore the human civilization of the past. It was just that they searched openly and secretly, but the mysterious powerhouse never showed up. Until recently, when Lu Nian's incident happened, Lu Nian and his subordinates were torn apart one by one. At that time, everyone below the stage was shocked beyond words. Emosure was the only one who looked calm. His uncle was on the stage and saw it clearly, so he guessed a little. Plus, the gym and other places where the mysterious powerhouse first appeared, most of them were around the corpses. He was finally sure that Emosure was the mysterious powerhouse. Originally, he wanted to discuss with Emosure to see if he could contribute some of his own blood. But after so many years, with his understanding of the mysterious powerhouse would not casually contribute blood. So, he had to come up with this plan. Previously, when Little Doe was shot, she actually wanted to attack Emosure and get some of Emosure's blood. When the mutated zombie escaped from the laboratory, it was also her uncle Mayangshur who asked her to do it. The purpose was also for the blood. As long as it was an enhanced version of the zombie, even if it only made a small cut on Emosure's body, it would be of great help to their research. Later, when the zombie almost bit Happy, it was also arranged by Mayangshur. That zombie was actually not an ordinary zombie. It was a zombie that had been enhanced by the X2 virus. But the focus of the enhancement was on its claws. So it could not be seen from the outside. But the people they arranged made a mistake in the zombie room. Originally, they tampered with Emosure's zombie room, but mistakenly tampered with Happy's zombie room, which led to Happy being bitten. All of this was the cause of the matter. After Emosure finished checking these memories, he only felt a slight headache. Previously, after he plundered those people's memories, he only checked the memories of the past few months. So he did not feel uncomfortable. But this Miss Ponytail was a key figure, so he naturally had to check all of her memories. In a short period of time, he had checked so many memories, in addition to the memories of many others he had checked before. It was inevitable that he would feel dizzy. He took out a bottle of brain cell recovery medicine and drank it. He immediately felt that his headache had eased a lot. Then he ignored Miss Ponytail, who had become an idiot. He turned around, tapped his feet lightly, and walked towards the corpse farm. Behind him, Miss Ponytail, whose IQ was infinitely close to zero, was still holding her head and wailing. But soon she would not be in pain anymore. Bang, there was a muffled sound. Her head exploded into a cloud of blood under the moonlight. No matter what reason you have, since you have already caused harm to Happy, then you should be prepared to die. Don't say that it's pardonable, don't say that you have become an idiot to forgive her. Forgiving her is God's business. My mission is to send her to see God. In the distance, the members of the body hunters saw Emosher leave. They thought that he had let Miss Ponytail go. They immediately walked towards Miss Ponytail. However, just as they took a few steps, Miss Ponytail's head suddenly exploded. Everyone was shocked. They did not know what Emosher had seen from Miss Ponytail's memories. They only knew that Captain Ma had already said that there was a reason for all of this. In the end, Emosher did not even bother to listen to a word. He directly exploded Captain Ma's head. The viciousness and mercilessness of the mysterious expert was once again deeply imprinted in everyone's hearts. If there was nothing, it was better not to provoke the mysterious expert. Even if there was something, they could not provoke him, because they would not even have the chance to explain. Chapter 91. After Emosher killed Sister Ponytail, he went straight to the corpse farm. The mastermind was Ma Yangshi. Then there was only one end for him. Behind him, the members of the hunting group saw Emosher heading towards the corpse field. They all looked at each other in disbelief. In the end, everyone's eyes fell on Guojutao, the leader. Although Guojutao's words and actions were feminine, he really took on the responsibility of a leader since he became the leader. And he did a good job. So, everyone was quite convinced by him. At this time in this situation, they naturally waited for Guojutao to make a decision. Guojutao frowned. Logically speaking, in this case he should chase after him. What if the mysterious strongman killed others? Although he couldn't stop him from killing people, he should at least know the reason. It would be easier to explain to the people in the base. However, the mysterious strongman was full of murderous intent. If he followed him, he might annoy him. As long as he wanted to, it would be too late to escape. Who dared to go up? Wasn't that courting death? But as the leader, even if he was going to die, he had to bite the bullet. At least he should go and ask why Emosher killed people. He used to be the deputy leader of the corpse hunting team in Area A. He knew a little about Emosher. Emosher wouldn't kill people for no reason. Thinking of this, he said to the others, "I'll go first. You follow me from a distance. Without my order, no one should act rashly." But at this time, a person walked out of the crowd. It was Du Xiaodo, the leader of the first team. He said, "Leader, let me go. I probably know the reason." "Ha!" Guojutao turned around and looked at Du Xiaodo in surprise. "Xiaodo, you?" He went to see Xiaodo during the day. At that time, Xiaodo even had difficulty breathing. The doctor said that Xiaodo couldn't get out of bed at all for a month. Why did he suddenly appear in front of him now? Moreover, he looked even healthier than himself. Not only Guojutao. The other members also widened their eyes in shock. They looked at Du Xiaodo in disbelief. "Leader Xiaodo, why are you?" Du Xiaodo didn't wait for them to finish and said, "It's the mysterious strongman." Everyone suddenly understood. If it was a mysterious expert, then there was nothing to be surprised about. Ever since the mysterious expert had appeared, he had given people too many surprises. Until now they were somewhat numb. It seemed that no matter what happened to the mysterious expert, they would not be surprised. Even if you say that the mysterious elite is a mutant, a superhuman, and has been injected with the super soldier serum, you will never be able to believe it. They wouldn't even find it strange if he had the genes of a giant dragon. On the contrary, he felt that it was more logical. However, they would never have guessed that Emosher really had giant dragon genes. Xiaodo continued. "I know a little about this. And not only did he have to let them know, he had to let them hear it with their own ears. Otherwise, even if he told them, they would not believe him. Soon those people rushed over. Guojutao thought of something again and immediately reached into his shirt pocket. At the same time, Old Li and Happy were also awakened by the commotion. The two of them heard someone talking in the yard. Out of curiosity, they gently opened the window a little. Under the moonlight in the yard, Emosher was still speechless. He was waiting for Ma Yangshi to continue. Although the moment Ma Yangshi targeted him, the outcome was already decided. But for a person like Ma Yangshi who had worked hard and contributed a lot, such a big boss behind the scenes, he was willing to give him a chance to leave behind his last words. Ma Yangshi did not seem to see the people outside the corpse farm at all. He continued, but all of these are necessary sacrifices. It is impossible to restore human civilization without sacrifices. So I don't regret it. Then he turned his head and looked at one of his row of corpses. There was a hint of gentleness in his eyes. He continued. That year you were injured when you saved those people in the residential area of Block E. We extracted a few drops of your blood. After studying it, we found that your blood is very powerful. I plan to ask for a few more drops of your blood. As long as we studied your blood thoroughly, we believed that we could create more psychokinesis and hunters as powerful as you. But no matter how we searched, you refused to show up. We had no choice but to do this. Chapter 92. Under the moonlight, Ma Yangshi's figure was no longer tall. He looked a bit thin. He sighed and said, Unfortunately, if you showed up earlier we could have a good talk. Maybe you wouldn't be so hostile towards me. Then, the entire human civilization might be able to reappear soon. At this moment, Emosher finally opened his mouth. One drop of blood is not enough, you want a few more. If a few drops of blood is not enough, do you want all of my flesh and blood? Ma Yangsher did not deny. He said, If all of your flesh and blood can be exchanged for the restoration of the entire human civilization, then I won't rule out doing so. Emosher said coldly, You sound so noble, don't you have any selfishness? The zombie you secretly raised for more than 20 years, is it your wife? Maybe her body also has my blood. Ma Yangsher smiled bitterly and nodded. Of course there aren't many people in this world who don't have selfishness. I'm also just a mortal. Hearing this, everyone felt like they were struck by lightning. Raising a zombie for more than 20 years? This news made everyone feel like their whole world was about to be turned upside down. After the base was established, Chief Ma once drafted the base basic law. The basic law is the code of conduct for everyone in the base. One of the rules is, it is strictly forbidden to raise zombies privately, violators will be killed without mercy. Although strict, zombies are extremely dangerous. If they are raised privately, if they get infected, the entire base will be finished. So for this rule, the people who have suffered from zombies are all in favor. But who would have thought that Chief Ma was actually raising zombies privately? And he raised them for more than 20 years. Who would have thought that the person who made the law would be the first to break the law? Ma Yangsher smiled bitterly and said calmly, Xiao Min is my wife. Unfortunately she was infected after the virus broke out. But although she became a zombie, I couldn't bear to leave her. So I kept her. Your blood has a strong restraining effect on the X virus. This gave me hope. Although zombies look like walking corpses, after our research we found that the zombie's body is not dead, it's just that their cells are suppressed by the virus, so it's like they are dead. I fused your blood with Little Min's and found that Little Min's blood has regained its activity. That's why I want to borrow your blood. This is also an important reason. Emosher said coldly. Are you sure you can recover your memories if your body recovers? Ma Yangsher shook his head. I don't know, but we have to try. Emosher's voice was cold. So, you want me to sacrifice myself to save all of mankind and save your wife? Ma Yangsher said, If it were me, I would do the same. Emosher's eyes were cold as he spat out 4 words. I'm not you. Ma Yangsher nodded and smiled bitterly. I know. Therefore they could only resort to this method. Unfortunately he failed in the end. Sighing, he slowly said, I only have one last request. Emosher was speechless. Ma Yangsher said, I know that there's only one outcome for what I've done to you. But, can I choose how I die? Emosher didn't say anything. Ma Yangsher nodded slowly at Emosher. Thank you. Then he turned around and slowly walked to the zombie room where his wife was locked up. As he walked he sighed. Xiao Wei is a good child, but unfortunately, I've let you down. As he spoke, tears flashed in his eyes. When he arrived at the door of the zombie room, he took out the key that he kept close to him like a treasure and opened the door. At this moment he seemed to have become much more relaxed. It was as if he had put down the heavy burden that he had carried for decades. In the room his wife, the female zombie, saw the human appear. She immediately roared, bared her teeth and waved her claws, wanting to pounce over. The iron chains rattled as they were pulled. Ma Yangsher put a collar around his neck and fastened the iron chain to the collar. Everyone finally knew what he was going to do. A few members of the hunting group had already walked into the courtyard and called out, Chief! Chief, don't! Mysterious powerhouse, can you let the chief go? Old Lee and Happy's door had also been opened. The two of them came to the courtyard. "Chief." Old Lee's eyes flashed. Happy held Emosher's hand tightly. However, Emosher was unmoved. Ma Yangsher turned around and said to Guojutao, "Xiaogua, send us to the laboratory tomorrow. The laboratory hasn't received a new zombie that has just been transformed for a long time. I should be able to help." "Chief." Guojutao's voice was already choked with sobs. But Ma Yangsher ignored him. He turned his head and looked at the female zombie. His gaze became gentle. He said softly, "Xiaomin, it's been more than 20 years. We can finally be together." As he said that, he took a step forward with a smile on his face. "Roar." The female zombie immediately grabbed his hand and pulled him over. She opened her mouth and bit his neck. Blood immediately gushed out. When the female zombie saw the blood, she became even more violent. She kept shaking her head left and right, biting Ma Yangsher like a wild dog biting its prey. Ma Yangsher did not resist. He just endured the pain and fixed the other end of his chain into the iron buckle on the wall. Then he hugged the female zombie tightly. No matter how hard the female zombie tried to bite his neck, he didn't care. Blood splattered. It was unbearable to watch. Everyone was silent. After a while, Ma Yangsher's eyes gradually turned gray. There was a final smile on his face. He turned his head and looked at everyone. "Goodbye." In the next moment he suddenly pounced on everyone. A beast-like roar came from his throat. Roar, roar. The two zombies, one male and one female, kept pouncing on everyone as if they had gone mad. The chains behind them rattled as they were pulled. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. They could not come back to their senses for a long time. Only then did the murderous aura on Emosher slowly fade away. Looking at the two zombies in the zombie recovery room, he subconsciously held Happy's cold hand tightly. The moon hung high in the sky. It reflected this gloomy world. The next day, the hunting group asked for Emosher's opinion. They announced everything that happened last night. When everyone heard the news, besides being shocked, they also found it hard to believe. They did not believe that Chief Ma was such a person. However, the leader of the hunting group, Guojutao, took out a recording pen. Last night, he knew that people would not believe it, so he had already recorded the conversation between Chief Ma and Emosher. Once the recording was released, people were still in shock, but they had to believe it. In the end, they followed Chief Ma's last words and sent him and his wife to the laboratory. Emosher felt a little complicated. Such a person had always wanted to harm him, so he naturally deserved to die. However, this was not the ending he wanted to see. Was what he had done right or wrong? However, he only hesitated for a long time. After half a day he thought it through. In the apocalypse, survival was the way to go. What nobility! What selfless sacrifice! All of that was courting death. This matter was over. Next, Emosher planned to go to Base C2. It was only about 100 kilometers away from the Dragon Ruins. He wanted to see if he could sign in there. Since the system was able to give him such a map, the items he signed in the Draconic Ruins must be extraordinary. Chapter 93. Now, Emosher's identity had been made public in Base C1. Old Lee was naturally very surprised and couldn't come back to his senses for an entire day. Happy was very happy. Although she had long guessed that Emosher was a mysterious elite, she felt as if a stone had been lifted from her heart when she received confirmation this time. Moreover, Brother Emo was so powerful. How could she not be happy? As for the others, no one dared to approach Emosher. He had killed so many people in one night, including Regiment Commander Ma and Chief Ma. Who would dare to approach him? As for talking about him, they didn't even dare to. In the eyes of the people, talking about such a mysterious elite was equivalent to courting death. Although some people were secretly unhappy that Emosher had killed Regiment Commander Ma and forced Chief Ma to his death. But that was only in the dark. In the face of such a mysterious elite, they didn't dare to say a word. Occasionally people would see Emosher on the road, but they would either stay far away from him or stand by the side. Otherwise, they would stand by the roadside and wait for Emosher to pass by before quickly leaving. Emosher didn't care about any of this. No one came to disturb him, and he was happy with the peace and quiet. Of course, most people were still grateful to Emosher. Emosher was cruel and merciless, but he had saved the base so many times. If it wasn't for Emosher, they would have become zombies long ago. Among them, the one who was most grateful to Emosher was Yang Kong. Now, Yang Kong couldn't do strenuous exercise. He had become an ordinary person. However, the gratitude in his heart towards Emosher had never changed. When he found out that the mysterious elite was Emosher, He took 2 bottles of Shifeng wine that he had kept for more than 20 years and went to the zombie farm. Although he was just an ordinary person, he wasn't as afraid as the others when facing Emo Shi. Emo Shi, Old Li and Yang Kong finished the 2 bottles of wine. Old Li and Yang Kong were already drunk and hazy. Happy was worried that Emo Shi would feel uncomfortable when he was drunk. But when she saw that Emo Shi didn't seem drunk at all, she was relieved. Since Emo Shi had found out all the facts, the 2 people from Base C2 were no longer a suspect. However, guild leader Guizhu Tao did not let them leave immediately. This was because the mysterious expert Emo Shi had instructed them not to let them leave. In a few days he would go to Base C2 with them. That night after midnight, Emo Shi spoke in his mind. System, sign in. The system's voice quickly sounded. Sign in successful. Sign in event. Killed mutated psychokinesis Ma Wei. Investigate the truth. Sign in reward. Blood Demon's Eyes upgrade. Psychic blessing. Leader's will. Dragon breath pearl. Emo Shi was a little excited when he saw that there were so many rewards. 2 events and 4 rewards. This was the first time. He carefully examined the rewards. The first 3 were all skills. After the upgrade, the Blood Demon's Eye could directly identify the level of any creature. Telekinesis Blessing was the same as Sister Ponytail's skill. It could be used to activate other people's telekinesis. The leader's will could control these people whose telekinesis was activated. In other words, the system rewarded all the abilities that Sister Ponytail obtained after her telekinesis mutated to Emo Shi. In the end, Emo Shi focused his attention on the Dragon Breath Pearl. It was a translucent pearl the size of a walnut. He could see the fiery red flames inside the pearl. And if he looked closer, he would find that this flame was in the shape of a dragon. A line of words appeared on the pearl. Frowny face. Dragon Breath Pearl. Automatically activates when life is in danger. Creates the shadow of a flaming dragon and spits out flaming dragon breath. Can instantly kill any enemy below level 10 hunter. Note, can be used repeatedly. When Emo Shi saw this, he couldn't help but smile. He planned to leave the base, but he was worried about Happy. With this Dragon Breath Pearl, even level 10 hunters, strong mutated zombies and mutated beasts wouldn't be able to harm Happy. However, Emo Shi was still worried about this. That afternoon he brought over a Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer and injected it into Happy. He hoped that she could become a corpse hunter. After all, the Dragon Breath Pearl was dead, but humans were alive. If she had some ability to protect herself, it would be much better than the Dragon Breath Pearl. However, to Emo Shi's surprise, after Happy was injected, there was no change. He then tried another brain cell enhancer, but there was still no change. He could clearly sense with his telekinesis that after the medicine entered Happy's body and circulated once, it had no effect and was expelled through her sweat pores. Emo Shi found it strange. In his opinion, the gene enhancer produced by the system was very effective. It should be useful to anyone. But he didn't expect that even the gene enhancer produced by the system couldn't stimulate Happy's potential. After that, he tried to bless Happy with his telekinesis. Happy still didn't react. Emo Shi was speechless. Could it be that Happy was the legendary trash? Such a beautiful girl shouldn't be like that. Since he couldn't figure it out, Emo Shi didn't think too much about it. Over the next 2 days he signed in and received 20 recovery potions. He gave these recovery potions to Happy and told her to drink a bottle if she was injured. Happy was a little puzzled. She stared at Emo Shi with a pair of expressive eyes. Emo Shi explained, "Happy, I have to go to Base C2 for some time." Happy was stunned. She couldn't bear for Brother Emo to leave. However, she was very sensible. She knew that Brother Emo must have something important to do there. She didn't ask much. She just looked at Emo Shi with concern as if saying, "Brother Emo, you must take good care of yourself when you go there alone." Emo Shi chuckled and rubbed Happy's head. He said, "Don't worry." Then he took out the Dragon Breath Pearl and handed it to Happy. He told her what it was for and asked her to keep it with her. Happy's eyes flickered. She was reluctant to part with him, but she was also happy. Before Brother Emo left, he had done so many things for her. It meant that he had her in his heart. However, while she was happy, she couldn't help but be worried. Brother Emo was so powerful, but she was just an ordinary person. She was even a mute girl who couldn't even be considered an ordinary person. She wasn't worthy of Brother Emo at all. "Alright, it's getting late. Rest early." As Emo Shi spoke, he got up and was about to leave. However, at this moment, Happy suddenly came over. Her lips touched Emo Shi's face lightly. Then she seemed to be a little scared herself. She retreated in a panic. Her heart was pounding like a crazy deer. The blush on her face had already spread to her neck. His heart was filled with apprehension and fear. She didn't mean to do that just now. It was just that when she looked at Brother Mo's face, that impulse suddenly rose in her heart. She couldn't help but move closer. Oh no, will Brother Mo be angry? She wanted to apologize to Brother Mo, but she couldn't muster up the courage. Just as she was feeling nervous, she felt a gentle hand reach out to the top of her head. He gently rubbed it twice. At the same time, Brother Mo's voice sounded. Happy you've learned bad things. Chapter 94. Mo sure was a little surprised that he was kissed by force, but he understood. Sometimes people would have the urge to kiss the person they liked. This was a biological instinct. It was a very natural thing. Although Happy was a more reserved girl, when she knew that she was about to leave, she could not help but have this impulse because she was reluctant to part with him. Mo sure touched the part of his face that seemed to still have a trace of warmth, and a happy smile appeared on his face. On the third day, the man and woman from Base C2 were released. The leader of the hunting group, Guiju Tao, smiled apologetically to the two of them. The matter has been investigated. The two of you are innocent. I'm sorry for making you suffer. The woman in leather, Zhen Shishir, was indignant. But at this time she did not dare to say anything. Now she already understood that psychokinesis was not omnipotent. Level 4 psychokinesis was not enough to run rampant. If something went wrong and she was hit with another strong anesthetic bomb, she would have to suffer again. Hao Ren, on the other hand, had a smile on his face. He waved his hand and said, it's okay. I can understand. You're investigating a case. This is what you should do. Guiju Tao followed Mo Shi's instructions and said to the two of them, you said that Base C2 doesn't have a laboratory or a corpse-raising room. Then our base will send 2 technical talents to you. One is a laboratory researcher, and the other is a corpse-raising person in the corpse-raising field. Then he called the researcher and Mo Shi over. The man and woman had been locked up for a few days, so they did not know that Mo Shi was the mysterious powerhouse. Mo Shi did not intend to reveal his true identity on this trip to Base C2. He still enjoyed the feeling of hiding behind the scenes and quietly becoming stronger. Moreover, it was hard to know what was in a person's heart. Who knew if other people had good intentions? He was already so strong, but Ma Yangshi still dared to harm him. The two of them were naturally very surprised that Base C2 could send them technical talents. The indignation in their hearts lessened a lot. Mo Shi and the others were about to leave Base C1. Not many people came to send them off. Guiju Tao looked into Mo Shi's eyes and whispered, don't worry, I'll help you take care of Happy and Old Li. Mo Shi nodded. Thank you very much. Happy stared at Mo Shi while he stood by the side. There were faint tears in his eyes. Mo Shi went to Happy's side and comforted him. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Happy nodded. She was very sensible and would not force Brother Mo to stay. She looked at Mo Shi with her watery eyes. It was as if they were saying, Brother Mo, come back early. Mo Shi patted Happy's head and messed up her hair. He said, let's go back. Then he turned around and boarded the helicopter. The helicopter's rotors began to spin as it slowly rose into the air. A cloud of dust rose from the ground. Watching Mo Shi leave, Guiju Tao began to feel pressured in his heart. The mysterious expert left. In that case, the safety of the base would be in the hands of the hunter group. In the past, he did not feel much pressure to maintain the safety of the base. But now that the mysterious expert had left, he suddenly felt that the burden on his shoulders had become much heavier. If there was another crisis like before, he was afraid that, after the helicopter rose into the air, Hao Ren said to Mo Shi with a grin, Hey brother, what's your relationship with that girl just now? Before Mo Shi could say anything, Zhen Shishir glared at him. Hao Ren, what do you want? Hao Ren subconsciously shrank back. He chuckled. Nothing, I just think that girl is really beautiful. Seeing Zhen Shishir's face turn cold, he quickly said, Of course she's not as beautiful as you. Then he secretly winked at Mo Shi. Then he said to Mo Shi, Brother, she's your friend, right? I could tell when we went to the corpse farm that day. You're really lucky. Mo Shi glanced at Hao Ren and replied faintly, Yes. Seeing that Mo Shi seemed to be hostile to him, Hao Ren could not help but wave his hand and laugh. Brother, don't worry. Although I, Hao Ren, am not a good person, I'm lustful but not obscene. And I also know that I can't bully my friend's wife. You can keep your heart in your stomach. Zhen Shishir seemed to be unable to bear it anymore. She said angrily, If you don't shut your dog mouth, I'll sew it up. Hao Ren quickly shrank back and said, It's just a chat. It's just a chat. There's no need, no need. Then he turned his head and calmly flew the helicopter. Jean Chercheur, who was wearing a leather coat, snorted coldly. She leaned back in her chair. She ignored the others. Emosher was too lazy to say anything. As for the researcher sent by the laboratory, he did not say anything when he saw that the others were silent. The helicopter faced the sun and flew in the northeast direction. Base C2 was in the former Liaodongyan mountain. It was more than 1,200 kilometers away from Base C1. The fuel Hao Ren and the others brought when they came to Base C1 should be enough to last until they reached Base C2. Emosher leaned against the cabin door and looked outside. He saw that as far as his eyes could see, it was all green. Abandoned cities and lonely villages were all occupied by green plants. Emosher looked at all of this, his thoughts fluctuating. More than 20 minutes later, a cry suddenly pulled Emosher's thoughts back. Oh no, there's a flying mutant beast. The next moment. Bang, with a loud noise, the helicopter suddenly shook violently. Outside the helicopter, there was a huge human-headed bee with a length of 10 meters. This human-headed bee had 2 pairs of blood-red wings. The widest part of its wings was 15 meters. Its 6 legs were covered with barbs. At the tip of each leg there was a sharp hook-shaped spike. Under the sun, it shone with a cold light. The strangest thing was that its head was a huge human head with a diameter of half a meter. This human head had no skin and it was badly mutilated. A pair of deep eye sockets. A javelin-like mouthpart poked out of the human head's mouth. The whole thing looked disgusting and terrifying. Emosher used to think that the human-headed bees were named because their hives were shaped like human heads. But now that he saw this huge mutant human-headed bee, he finally understood. This was the real human-headed bee. He took advantage of the fact that no one noticed. His pupils suddenly turned blood red. The blood demon's eye opened. In the next moment he checked the level of this mutant human-headed bee. Species, mutant human-headed bee, level 3 strong mutant beast. After the upgrade of the blood demon's eye, he could see the strength level of any creature. This was much more convenient. Since it was a level 3 mutant beast, these 2 people would not have a problem dealing with it. Emosher naturally did not have to do anything. Hao Ren said to Jean Chercheur next to him. Jinzi, you open it. Then he turned around and said to Emosher and the researcher. Brothers, I'll show you my skills. As he said that, he directly opened the cabin door next to him. He jumped out. He hung on the landing gear of the helicopter with one hand. His right hand waved to the human-headed bee and smiled. The beauty opposite, look over here. Chapter 95. 95A Crossbow Arrow. Hao Ren hung on the helicopter landing gear with one hand. He was teasing the giant bee. The human-headed hornet seemed to be angered as well. It flapped its wings and its 2-meter-long mouthpiece stabbed straight at Hao Ren. Hao Ren gently moved his body to the side, avoiding the stab. At the same time he raised his right leg high above his head, forming a horse shape. He suddenly chopped down. Crack. The bee's mouthpiece suddenly broke. The head bee let out a miserable shriek. The poisonous needle on its tail, which was more than a meter long, was aimed straight at Hao Ren. Hao Ren smiled and said, Beautiful women like to be F***ked? As you wish. With that he moved his body to the side, avoiding the attack. At the same time he chopped down with his foot. Crack. The 1-meter-long poisonous needle suddenly broke in the middle. Black venom suddenly spurted out. Hao Ren moved his body to the side, avoiding the spurted venom. Then he kicked the bee's abdomen. Bang, there was a muffled sound. The bee's huge abdomen suddenly burst open. The 2 pairs of wings drooped down weakly and the whole huge body fell down. Hao Ren didn't seem to be satisfied. He shook his head and said, I didn't use my strength and you fell down. This won't do. Do you have any sisters? Call them out. However, before he finished speaking, on the mountain top not far away between the woods, a black mass of things flew out. There were probably hundreds of them. Looking carefully, they were all mutated bees. Each of them was about the same size as this one. Each of them had a huge human head. Hao Ren's expression changed and he shouted, So many? Too many beautiful women, can't take it. He quickly jumped into the cabin. Jean Chercheur said angrily, Crow's beak. Hao Ren smiled, Jinzi, it's up to you. Jean Chercheur rolled her eyes at Hao Ren. He unzipped his leather jacket. There were 60 flying daggers in the leather jacket. Using his telekinesis, the flying dagger flew out and circled around the fuselage. However, the human-headed hornet seemed to know how powerful they were. It didn't fly too close. Instead, it extended its tail more than 100 meters away. Whoosh, whoosh. They actually shot out the poisonous needles from their tails. Zhen Shusher's expression changed slightly when she saw this. He hurriedly controlled the 60 flying daggers to spin around him. He blocked the poisonous needles. However, the venomous stings on the head hornets were not something that could be used once. After shooting out one needle, a new one would quickly grow out from their tails. Over 100 mutated human-headed wasps shot out over 100 poisonous stingers every time. Even Zhen Shusher, who had level 4 psychokinesis, found it difficult to resist. Seeing this, Mo Shi sent out his telekinesis, intending to think of a way to kill these human-headed bees. However, at this moment, an urgent alarm suddenly sounded in the cabin. Howren looked down at the dashboard and cursed. Damn it, the fuel tank was hit. We have to land and repair it as soon as possible. Mo Shi glanced at the ground. This was a mountainous area, so they couldn't land. More than 10 kilometers away there was a large piece of flat land. Let's go there. Mo Shi pointed at the large piece of flat land. Howren immediately controlled the helicopter and flew towards that piece of flat land. Soon the helicopter landed on that piece of flat land. Zhen Shusher quickly sent out her telekinesis to check if there were any other dangers around. Mo Shi took advantage of the fact that her telekinesis wasn't focused on the human-headed bees. He immediately spread out his telekinesis. It was just a sweep. Bang 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 bang. Almost all of the mutated human-headed bees' heads made a muffled sound. However, when Mo Shi triggered their brainwaves, he controlled the frequency to not be too high. So from the outside their heads were still intact. In fact, they had exploded into a paste inside. Hundreds of mutated human-headed bees immediately fell from the sky. At the same time, Mo Shi's mind was filled with notifications of evolution points. Killed a level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. Killed a level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. Hundreds of mutated human-headed bees allowed Mo Shi to gain 300,000 evolution points in an instant. After a year of consumption he had less than 6 million evolution points left. This time he should be able to replenish a lot on the way to C2 base. At this moment the helicopter landed on a large piece of cement. Although there were weeds that were as tall as a person growing on the cement, there were also a few trees that occasionally grew. However, compared to other places, there were a lot less weeds and trees. The helicopter had just landed and Howren was busy repairing the fuel tank. Zhen Shusher scanned the surroundings with her telekinesis and didn't find any danger. She immediately turned around and looked at the human-headed bees that were chasing them. But when she looked, she couldn't help but stare blankly. Ichem? Howren heard her doubtful voice and also looked at the sky behind the helicopter. He saw that there was nothing there. There was no human-headed bees. The few of them were all at a loss. Zhen Shusher carefully scanned the surroundings twice, but she still didn't find the human-headed bees. She frowned and shook her head. She said to Howren, "Quickly fix it and leave." Howren nodded, "Don't worry. Other than one thing that I'm not happy about, everything else." But just as he said this, his voice suddenly stopped. Everyone realized that something was wrong and walked to Howren's side. They followed Howren's gaze. They saw that there were more than 10 poison needles stuck in the helicopter. But this wasn't the main point. The main point was that the needle stuck in the fuel tank was clearly different from the other needles. The other needles were black. But this needle was copper yellow and there was even some rust on it. Howren scratched his head and carefully examined the needle. He discovered that the needle was actually bronze. Howren couldn't help but ask, "Are the human-headed bees now able to produce bronze in their bodies?" After Zhen Shusher carefully examined it with her telekinesis, she frowned and said, "It's a crossbow arrow." The others heard this and were stunned. The most essential difference between zombies, mutant beasts and humans was that humans could use tools and weapons. Mutant beasts naturally couldn't use tools and weapons. Even the strongest mutant zombies had never seen them use weapons. After all, for them, no matter how powerful the weapon was, it was not as good as their claws and teeth. So now that a bronze crossbow arrow suddenly appeared here, it could only mean one thing. There were other people here. And this person obviously didn't come with good intentions. Zhen Shusher quickly spread out her telekinesis again to explore the surroundings. But the range of her telekinesis could only reach a radius of 400 meters. Within the range of her detection, she didn't see any other people at all. There were 2 mutant beasts, but it was obvious that they couldn't pose any threat to them. She could only shake her head to the others and said, "I'll be on guard. Howren, you fix it quickly." Howren nodded, "Don't worry, Jinzi. Chapter 96. Howren took out all kinds of tools and began to get busy. It seemed that he was very familiar with it. Generally speaking, people who became hunters focused on training and working hard to improve their strength. It was impossible to waste time on things like fixing things. It was really surprising that Howren could fix things so skillfully. However, Emoshir's attention was not here at the moment. His telekinesis covered a radius of 1,000 meters. Just as he released his telekinesis, he discovered that a figure had appeared more than 900 meters away. That person held a bronze crossbow in his hand and was running southeast. When Emoshir planned to investigate carefully, that person had already run out of Emoshir's detection range. Emoshir frowned slightly. He did not chase after him. First, it would expose his strength. Second, what if there was danger? Third, it was not necessary. With his cautious personality, he would not casually take risks when there were no huge benefits. However, why did he feel that the way that person ran was strange? It seemed a little stiff. But compared to the stiffness of zombies, it was much better. And the clothes that the figure was wearing did not look like ordinary clothes. As for what was wrong, Emoshir just used his telekinesis to roughly scan and could not tell. He just muttered in his heart, could it be that this was a zombie with a higher degree of mutation? Then he retracted his telekinesis and carefully scanned the bronze crossbow twice. He tried to find some clues from this bronze crossbow. As a result, he found that although there were a few fingerprints left on the bronze crossbow, but those fingerprints were very strange. Every fingerprint seemed to be there and then not. Emoshir's eyebrows slightly creased again. But it did not matter. He still had a trick that could greatly increase the detection range. With a thought, he took out the virtual sentry tower from his backpack. The virtual sentry tower was activated and covered a radius of 5 kilometers. And Emoshir's telekinesis, with the help of the virtual sentry tower, instantly covered a radius of 5 kilometers. He had a panoramic view of everything within a 5-kilometer radius. After his telekinesis reached level 10, he found that his telekinesis and the virtual sentry tower could interact. As long as the virtual sentry tower was activated, his telekinesis would be able to use the sentry tower to explore a radius of 5 kilometers. At this time, his telekinesis swept across a radius of 5 kilometers and quickly found the figure. The man was holding a bronze crossbow. A quiver of arrows hung from his waist. He was 1.8 meters tall. The strange thing was that he was wearing an ancient costume. It wasn't an ordinary ancient costume. Rather, it was similar to the Terracotta Army's battle armor and battle robes. Her hair was also tied into a crooked bun. Why was this person dressed exactly the same as the Terracotta warriors? Cosplay? Then he carefully investigated. The man's face was painted green. It was a pale green color. Moreover, this pale green face was broken. From his left temple all the way to his nose, there was a piece missing. But it didn't look like a zombie's broken body. The zombies were badly mutilated and badly mutilated. As for this green-faced guy, the damage on his face was like a broken vase that had a piece of it knocked off. Or rather, it was like an eggshell that was missing a piece. But the strange thing was that through the hole on his head, he could clearly see the flesh inside. He could even see that the brain inside was still beating. Seeing this scene, even the experienced and knowledgeable Emoshir couldn't help but gasp in his heart. What the hell was this? It was called a Terracotta Army, but there was flesh and blood inside. It was called a zombie, but why did its shell look like it was made of clay? At this time, this green-faced Terracotta Army zombie was running towards the northeast at a speed of nearly 200 meters per second. A moment later, they passed through a half-collapsed door that was covered in green plants. This gate was in an antique style. Emoshir carefully examined it and vaguely recognized a few large words on the gate. Army. Museum. Emoshir understood that this was once the Terracotta Army Museum. Not far in front of this gate there was a huge roof. The size of this huge roof was more than 50 basketball courts. On the roof, hundreds of mutant bats were hanging upside down. Each of them was more than 5 meters long. They were much longer than the mutant bats he had seen before. Below these bats there were 3 huge pits. In these 3 pits, there were 8,000 Terracotta Army soldiers. The whole thing looked extremely magnificent and extraordinary. More than 8,000 soldiers and horses had been quietly standing for more than 2,000 years. Even when the world was swept by the virus, they still miraculously stood tall. Emoshir carefully examined these Terracotta Army soldiers. There was no second monster like the green-faced Terracotta Army soldier. In his previous life he had been to the Terracotta Army Museum. According to the guide, when the other Terracotta Army soldiers were unearthed from the 3 pits, They were either flesh-colored or pinkish-white. Only the kneeling terracotta army soldier, other than his hair, beard and black pupils, his face was completely green. There were many guesses about this. Some said that the green-faced terracotta army was a prank by the craftsman. Some said that the green-faced terracotta army was similar to a shaman. Some said that the green-faced terracotta army was used to scare the enemy. Emosher guessed that this terracotta army soldier might have been cuckolded by his neighbor. But now it seemed that it was all nonsense. The reason why he painted his face green was most likely related to his current appearance. At the same time, Emosher remembered an article he had read before. It said that one night an old man guarding the entrance of a museum was killed. No matter what, the murderer could not be found. In the end, blood was found on the hands of a green-faced terracotta army soldier. After comparing it with the old man's DNA, it was found to be the old man's blood. Some people said that this green-faced terracotta army soldier was resurrected and killed the old man. Of course, Emosher thought that it was all nonsense. At this time he spread out his telekinesis, trying to find the green-faced monster. But after scanning the place 3 times he could not find any trace of it. Emosher shook his head and stopped paying attention to it. Whether it was a green-faced monster or a green-faced fatty, he did not care. He thought that if he went to the museum and signed in, he should be able to get a special reward. He looked at the others and saw that they were not paying attention. His pupils immediately turned blood red, and he looked in the direction of the museum. There was indeed corpse energy there. But there was very little corpse energy, only a wisp. Obviously this was the corpse energy of the green-faced monster just now. Since there was corpse energy, that guy must be a zombie. Emosher thought for a while, turned to the other 3 and said, "I want to pee." Howrin laughed and said, "Brother, you really have a good taste in this kind of place." Emosher was speechless. "Pee." Howrin grinned and said, "Let's do it here." Emosher glanced at Zhen Shirshir and said, "There's a woman here, I can't pee." Zhen Shirshir snorted, "Tiske, as if you haven't seen anyone before." Howrin laughed, "Be careful, your little bug will be eaten by mutated beasts." Emosher didn't pay any attention to him. He stepped on the tall grass and entered a small forest more than 10 meters away. The next moment his footsteps were light. With a few steps he was more than 500 meters away. When those people were completely out of sight, he used the dragon shadow step. With one step he ran 1,000 meters in the direction of the museum. Only a 10-meter tall dragon shadow was left behind. But even if it was just a shadow, it was still domineering. Fortunately, in the forest and far away from those people, he was not seen by them. Chapter 97. Emosher covered 1,000 meters in one step. With every step he would leave behind a 10-meter tall and 30-meter long dragon phantom. Then it slowly disappeared. In just 4.5 steps he arrived at the half-collapsed entrance of the museum. He scanned the surroundings with his psychic power again. He still didn't find the green-faced monster. He shook his head and decided to ignore it for now. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." As soon as he finished speaking, the system replied, "Frowny face, sign in successful." Sign in location, Qin Shirwang's Terracotta Army Museum. Sign in reward, Qin crossbow. Emosher frowned and sighed. He was obviously not satisfied with this Qin crossbow. He already had the sky-killing dragon spear as a long-range attack weapon, so this Qin crossbow seemed quite useless. It couldn't be more powerful than the sky-killing dragon spear, right? He checked the Qin crossbow in his backpack with his mind. Qin Nu's appearance was also very ordinary. A wooden bow and a bronze crossbow. It came with a wooden crossbow arrow. Compared to the demon-devouring dragon spear, even the sky-killing dragon spear, forget it, let's not compare. Emosher smiled bitterly. He focused his mind on the Qin crossbow. An item introduction immediately appeared on it. It was very simple. There were only 7 words: frowny face Qin crossbow. Pierced through everything on earth. When Emosher saw this, his furrowed brows suddenly relaxed. Pierced through everything on earth, what kind of concept was this? In other words, nothing on earth could withstand a blow from it. Emosher suppressed the excitement in his heart and asked, "System, you only gave me 1 crossbow arrow? It's useless after 1 shot?" The system replied, "Frowny face, you can specify the sign-in reward, received crossbow arrow." Emosher nodded. "That's more like it." At this moment the system's voice sounded again. "This is a special place. You can sign in twice a day." A smile appeared on Emosher's face. This was good. He said again, "System, sign in." The system replied instantly, "Frowny face, sign in successful." Sign-in location, mutated bat lair. Sign-in reward, mutated bat king gene enhancer 1. Emoshir's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Thinking of this, he was looking forward to it. He took out the mutated bat king gene enhancer. It was a blood-red liquid. It was as red as fresh blood. He rolled up his sleeves and injected the mutated bat king gene enhancer into his left arm. Then he used his telekinesis to carefully observe the flow of the medicine. After the medicinal energy entered his body, it flowed along his blood vessels to his heart. Then it was pumped out by the heart and flowed through all the blood vessels to the rest of the body. In the end, the medicinal power fused with almost all the cells in his body. A new type of gene appeared in his body. At some point he felt a burning sensation on his back and between his ribs. This burning sensation was mainly concentrated on his two shoulder blades. Emoshir had a bad premonition. He lamented in his heart, "My clothes." In the next moment, Ryup, a clear and crisp sound came from behind. His back immediately felt much cooler. At the same time, a pair of blood-red wings with a wingspan of 5 meters appeared. This pair of blood-red wings was similar to a bat's in both shape and appearance. At the tip of the wings there were sharp claws. These claws were not like the claws of ordinary bats. Instead they were like crescent-shaped sickles. Cold light flickered on them and the atmosphere was oppressive. Emoshir's mind moved. The pair of wings circled around his body and reached his chest. Looking at this pair of blood-red wings, he was quite satisfied. He tried to flap the wings. His whole body immediately flew up shakily. Although it was a pair of wings that he had just obtained. These wings were like his arms and he didn't feel any awkwardness when using them. However, this was his first time practicing flying. He couldn't quite grasp the strength and the amplitude of the wings' movement. Swaying, swaying, swaying. He flew around the museum. He gradually got used to it. His speed wasn't slow either, reaching 300 meters per second. Although it was much slower than the Dragon Shadow Step, it was much faster than other hunters. One had to know that other hunters, even if they reached level 10, only had a speed of 200 meters per second. Moreover, if it was inconvenient to use the Dragon Shadow Step on special terrain, this pair of wings was the best choice. After a test flight, Emoshir landed. He retracted the wings back into his body. On his back, the skin that had been torn apart before quickly closed again. It was as smooth as new, as if it had never grown wings before. At this moment, a gust of wind blew past. Emoshir only felt a chill on his back. He sighed. This pair of wings was awesome, but it was a waste of clothes. Then he took out a piece of old clothes from his backpack and put it on. He turned around and glanced at the museum. Emoshir hesitated for a moment, but in the end he didn't go in to investigate. He always felt that this museum was too strange. He clearly detected that the green-faced monster went in. However, after entering the figurine pit, the green-faced monster disappeared. In the apocalypse, survival was the way to go. As for the others, they were all secondary. Thinking of this, he just used his telekinesis to scan slightly. In the next moment, the hundreds of mutated bats hanging upside down on the roof of the museum were suddenly torn apart. For a moment, the entire museum was like a heavy rain of blood and broken limbs. The 3 figurine pits were all dyed red with blood. All of the 8,000 terracotta soldiers were dyed red with blood. In Emoshir's mind, the system once again refreshed. Killed level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. Killed level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. After a moment of counting, this wave of killing a total of 300 mutated bats, gained more than 1 million evolution points. Seeing this, Emoshir nodded with satisfaction. He didn't stay any longer. His feet lightly stepped and his figure instantly leaped forward. Only a 10-meter tall giant dragon shadow was left behind. At the same time, after Emoshir left, in the figurine pit, tentacles as thick as fingers drilled out. If one looked carefully, one could see that each tentacle was made up of hundreds and thousands of extremely small arms. After these tentacles drilled out of the ground, they were like small snakes, crawling in all directions. Soon, the entire figurine pit was covered with blood-red tentacles. Moreover, they climbed along the legs of the terracotta soldiers and climbed up their bodies. The terracotta soldiers suddenly seemed to be formed by blood-red tentacles. All of the tentacles were greedily absorbing the blood and flesh of the bats on the ground. In a short 5 minutes, the blood and flesh of the 300 bats were completely absorbed. Then, in the figurine pit, blood began to seep out from the tentacles. Soon, the blood in the figurine pit was enough to cover the ground. A thick smell of blood immediately spread out. The tentacles were still quickly seeping out blood. Half an hour later, the 3 huge figurine pits had turned into 3 huge blood pools that were about 1.5 meters deep. These 3 blood pools, the largest one was the size of 30 basketball courts. The smallest one was the size of 5 football courts. At this time, the blood had just reached the neck of the terracotta soldiers. Looking from above, it looked like thousands of human heads were floating on the water. Extremely strange. Chapter 98. Emosher took another 4.5 steps and returned to the grove. When he left, he used his telekinesis to create a telekinesis illusion to replace himself. After reaching level 10 telekinesis, he could use his telekinesis to create a temporary telekinesis illusion to replace himself. Psychokinesis could be used to confuse the enemy. Ordinary people couldn't see telekinesis illusions, but psychokinesis could. It could be said that telekinesis illusions were a godly skill used to deceive psychokinesis. Naturally, he did this to prevent Zhen Shirshir from detecting any abnormalities. When he returned to the helicopter, it had been repaired and was waiting for him. Haoren saw Emosher and laughed. You changed your clothes just to relieve yourself? Did you pee on your clothes? Emosher smiled bitterly and said, that shirt was very old. It was scraped by the thorns on the tree just now and turned into strips of cloth. The researcher knew that Emosher was a mysterious strong man. He wondered if he had gone to kill zombies and mutant beasts just now. Haoren and Zhen Shirshir were puzzled, but they didn't suspect much. After all, in their eyes, this corpse keeper was just an ordinary person. Then the helicopter slowly rose and flew toward the northeast. However, when Emosher looked down with the blood demon's eye, he frowned slightly. He saw that there was only a wisp of corpse aura above the museum just now, but now it was full of corpse aura. It covered a 5-kilometer radius around the museum. It was the first time Emosher had seen such a strong corpse aura. The corpse aura of the dam and the C9 base was not even worth mentioning compared to this. However, the corpse aura here was not the strongest. About 1,500 meters to the west of the museum, there was a small mountain there which was the mausoleum of Emperor Qin. The corpse aura above the mausoleum was even more terrifying. It directly covered half the sky. It was like a blood-red sandstorm that covered the sky and the earth. There was even a large amount of corpse aura in the center that seemed to be solidified. Even when millions of zombies had besieged the city, there hadn't been such a strong zombie aura. Even Emosher couldn't help but feel a chill when he saw the almost solidified corpse chi. Moreover, the corpse chi gave him a very oppressive feeling. He had never felt this way when he saw corpse chi before. Obviously, the zombie that could produce this kind of corpse energy must be a terrifyingly strong zombie. And according to his previous experience, that guy's strength is likely to have surpassed level 10 mutant zombies. Emosher thought to himself, the wilderness is really dangerous. It seemed like he had better stay in the base and improve his strength if he had nothing to do. Although Zhen Shirshir couldn't see the corpse energy as a psychokinesis, her senses were far stronger than the average person's. She frowned and looked in the direction of Emperor Qin's mausoleum. I keep feeling that there's something wrong with that mountain. Let's leave quickly. Haoren didn't say anything this time. He piloted the helicopter and quickly left the mausoleum. When Emperor Qin's mausoleum was about to disappear from their sight, Emosher looked back again and glanced at it with the blood demon's eyes. He saw that the corpse energy still covered half of the sky there. The rest of the journey was very smooth. With the previous lesson, Emosher didn't think about anything else. He used his telekinesis to explore the surroundings along the way. Once there were zombies and mutant beasts that were a threat to them, they would be killed immediately. Zhen Shirshir would sometimes detect the zombies and mutant beasts that Emosher killed. This made her feel a little scared. She felt that there seemed to be a strong person in front of them. Otherwise, how could she explain the mutant beasts and zombies that were killed along the way? But no matter how she probed with her telekinesis, she couldn't find any clues about the strong person. Finally, 2 hours later, they arrived at the sky above Base C2. Base C2 was half the size of Base C1. There were no walls, but there were 3 10-meter-high walls from the inside to the outside, which surrounded the base. Before the helicopter landed, Emosher used his telekinesis. It went directly into the researcher's mind. The researcher's name was Xiao Di. After Emosher's telekinesis went into his mind, he began to stimulate his brain cells. His brain cells quickly became active. His brain waves also became stronger. Soon, the activity of his brain cells far exceeded that of an ordinary person. The strength of his brain waves also far exceeded that of an ordinary person. He had reached the strength of level 1 psychokinesis. However, this was not the end. Emo Sure continued to stimulate his brain cells. His telekinesis continued to increase. Level 2. Level 3. Level 4. Finally, his telekinesis stopped at level 5. From an ordinary person to a level 5 psychokinesis. It only took more than a minute. This was the power of the telekinesis blessing. When Sister Ponytail raised the ordinary people in the base to psychokinesis, most of them were level 1. Only one was level 2. This was because she was only a level 5 psychokinesis. Limited by her telekinesis, she could only raise it to this level. And Emo Sure's telekinesis far exceeded her. Therefore he could easily raise others' telekinesis to level 5. Of course, if he wanted to forcefully raise it to level 6 he could do it. However, that would consume too much of his telekinesis. There was no need. Naturally, Xiao Di also felt his own abnormality. His brain kept heating up. At the same time he felt his mind clear and his eyes clear. The feeling that came from his head made him want to moan in pleasure. But at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Stay calm as if nothing happened. That voice was like a great bell in his mind. It was deafening and intimidating. He could not help but obey the voice's orders. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and pretended as if nothing had happened. Seeing this, Emo Sure nodded in his heart. The leader's will was indeed powerful. The reason why Emo Sure wanted to raise Xiao Di to psychokinesis and use the leader's will on him. Naturally, he wanted him to be his informant. After what happened before, Emo Sure knew deeply that in this apocalypse, zombies and mutated beasts were not scary. What was scarier than zombies and mutated beasts was the human heart. Therefore, it was necessary to set up an informant in advance. Hao Ren and Jin Shirshir, who were next to them, could not imagine that the two people next to them were not ordinary people at all. They were psychokinesis, which was far more powerful than them. One was level 5 psychokinesis. The other was level 10 psychokinesis, which they could not imagine at all. Soon the helicopter landed. Hao Ren called people over and arranged accommodation for Emo Sure and Xiao Di. He said, "Don't neglect them. They are technical talents." Emo Sure and Xiao Di were temporarily arranged in an apartment next to the hunting group. After entering the room, Emo Sure probed with his telekinesis again. He entered Xiao Di's brain. He ordered Xiao Di, "Don't expose your strength. If there is any important news in the future, report to me." Xiao Di's response came quickly, "Yes." At the same time, Emo Sure had spread out his telekinesis to explore a radius of 1 kilometer. It was his first time here, so he had to be careful. At the same time, Hao Ren and Jin Shirshir had already gone to the base chief's office to report. Chapter 99. After Emo Sure and Xiao Di settled down, Hao Ren and Jin Shirshir went to report to the chief of the base. The chief's office was in the hunter group's headquarters. Emo Sure's mind power probed out, and he could easily detect their every move. The chief was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was also a hunter. Seeing the two of them enter, he put down the documents in his hand and said, "This time, we sent 9 helicopters to the other 9 bases to exchange information. You two came back the latest." Hao Ren lowered his head and said, "I'm sorry, Chief. We ran into some trouble." Then he told him how the people of Base C1 were hostile to them, how strange things happened, how they were locked up in the detention room and so on. As for how they were suddenly cleared of their wrongdoings and who did those things, the people of Base C1 didn't tell them at all. Naturally, they didn't know. Then they told the chief about the construction of the laboratory and the zombie farm. The bureau chief agreed with this. The helicopters that came back earlier had brought back all kinds of news from the other bases. They said that a few bases had built laboratories to study viruses, hunters, and psychokinesis. Their base C2 hadn't built a laboratory yet. He was planning to build a laboratory. In the end, Jin Shirshir said, "Chief, on our way back it seems that there was a strong person in front of us." The chief's eyes narrowed slightly. Jin Shirshir continued, "On the way back my psychic power could often detect the corpses of some mutated beasts and zombies on the ground. It seems that these mutated beasts and zombies were all killed in one move and torn in half. And even some level 5 mutated beasts and zombies were killed in one move." Hao Ren's expression changed slightly. "There's such a strong person?" The chief thought of another point. "You mean he was in front of you all the way?" Jin Shirshir nodded. "It seems so." The chief frowned slightly. "In other words, he's probably in our base now?" Jin Shirshir nodded. The bureau chief pondered for a moment and asked, "Could it be the 2 people you brought back?" Jin Shirshir shook her head slightly. The two of them are just ordinary people. They've been with us all this time, so it can't be them. When the bureau chief heard this, his expression became even more serious. The strongest hunter in our base is only level 5. The strongest psychokinesis was only at level 5. If it's really as you said, then the strength of that powerhouse is obviously far beyond level 5. He sneaked into our base without anyone noticing. He must be up to something. Hao Ren, tell the hunter group to be on high alert. Zhen Shishir, remind all the psychokinesis members to secretly investigate the base. Let's see if we can find anything. The two men looked at each other and said, "Yes, Chief." In the end, the bureau chief said, "The 9 helicopters we sent this time brought back a lot of useful information. I'll get someone to explain it to you in detail later, so you can understand the current situation." When Emoshir heard this, his heart skipped a beat. The world situation was important information. Soon, someone came over to explain the world situation to Zhen Shishir and Hao Ren. From this, it could be seen that the chief thought highly of these two people. From this person, Emoshir understood a lot of things that he didn't know before. And what surprised Emoshir the most was that people in other bases had seen a zombie from afar. That was a much stronger and more terrifying existence than a level 10 strong mutated zombie. With a roar, more than 30 level 10 strong mutated beasts' heads exploded. All the other zombies, even level 10 strong mutated zombies, were obedient in front of that zombie. Because that zombie was much stronger than a level 10 strong mutated zombie. So they called it a super mutated zombie. When Emoshir heard this, his heart trembled. There was a super mutated zombie? At the same time, he remembered the king that the two zombies mentioned when he killed them in the blood pool. It was very likely that the king was a super mutated zombie. With his current strength of level 10 psychokinesis, he could easily kill a level 10 strong mutated zombie. Then what about a super mutated zombie? Emoshir felt that his telekinesis might have a little advantage. But the other party's roar could explode the head of a level 10 strong mutated beast. In other words, the other party could use sound waves to attack. That's hard to say. It seemed that in the next period of time, he had to sign in well and improve his strength. That night, Emoshir signed in and injected 10 enhancers. After these 10 enhancers were injected, his body strength finally improved again. He reached level 10 hunter. In the next half a month, he continued to sign in and give out enhancers, increasing his body strength to the limit. At this point, whether it was his telekinesis or his body strength, he had reached the limit. If he wanted to break through again, he really needed a certain opportunity. Perhaps the Dragon Ruins would be his opportunity. However, in the past few days he hadn't gone to the Dragon Ruins. After all, he didn't know much about the wilderness around Base C2. It wouldn't be too late to go to the Dragon Ruins after he understood the surrounding situation. At the same time, in the past few days, the base had already begun to plan to build a laboratory and a corpse farm. Of course, the preparations would take a long time. Therefore, Emoshir was very idle these days. He wandered around Base C2 every day. In the eyes of others, he was taking a stroll and wandering. But when Emoshir was wandering, he had been using his telekinesis to investigate everything in Base C2. As long as anyone talked about Base C2 and the situation around the base, they couldn't escape his detection. Finally, after a month, he had almost figured out the situation around Base C2 and the surrounding area. The strength of the strong mutated beasts and strong mutated zombies around Base C2 was much stronger than those around Base C1. But they were all below level 10. Emoshir could easily deal with them. At the same time, he also heard a strange thing. 100 kilometers to the east, the plants there were blood red. Emoshir took out the map and looked at it. 100 kilometers to the east was the location of the Dragon Ruins. This made him frown tightly. He thought that as long as he found the right opportunity here, he could easily go to the Dragon Ruins to sign in. He didn't expect that there would be something strange about the Dragon Ruins. Why was it so difficult to level up? If his thoughts were known by other hunters in psychokinesis, they would probably want to kick him to death. We only level up once every 4 to 5 years, or even 7 to 8 years. You level up several times a year. You think it's difficult? Difficult my ass. That night it was drizzling. Emoshir lay on the bed, eating the roasted chicken that he had signed in from the cafeteria while drinking beer. He waited for the arrival of 12 o'clock. However, at around 11:30, an ear-piercing alarm sounded in the base. Deet deet deet. Chapter 100. At night, Emoshir took out the virtual sentry tower and set it up on the roof of his apartment building. It was better to be careful as he was new here. 11:30 p.m. Emo sure felt a little hungry. He immediately took out the roast chicken and beer and ate happily. In the past year, in order to make his mental power and physical strength reach the limit, he almost never went to the cafeteria to sign in. Now that both of them had reached the limit, he could finally satisfy his hunger. Just as he was happily eating the roast chicken and drinking beer, suddenly an ear-piercing alarm sounded in the base. Beep, beep, beep. Then urgent shouts could be heard from the loudspeaker. Zombies are attacking the city. All hunters and psychokinesis, immediately go to the northeast of the first line of defense. Emo sure sighed. He couldn't even eat supper in peace. Then he shook his head and ignored it. According to his understanding in the past few days, there were many mutant beasts and zombies in the wilderness around Base C1. But at most they were strong mutant zombies below level 3. And Base C2 had level 5 hunters and level 5 psychokinesis. There was no need for him to do anything. Thinking of this, he continued to eat and drink happily. At this time in the northeast of Base C2, outside the first wall, there was already a large black mass of zombies gathered. Preliminary estimates showed that there were tens of thousands of zombies. Inside the wall, the hunter group had already gathered. They all had solemn expressions. Under the illumination of the searchlight on the sentry tower, they saw the zombies gathered on the opposite side. The total number was estimated to be 10,000. Among them, those standing in the back row had expressions that were obviously different from ordinary zombies. They were all strong mutant zombies. And the number of strong mutant zombies had reached a terrifying number of more than 1,000. This was equivalent to more than 1,000 hunters. Which base could have more than 1,000 hunters? It was already a lot to have 60 or 70 hunters. And in Base C2, there were only 63 hunters. Fortunately, there were more than 30 psychokinesis in Base C2. And there were more than 5,000 hunters. Clearly, this was going to be an extremely tragic battle. If they won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. If they lost, there wouldn't be many zombies left. As a hunter, the chief of the base personally came to the front line to command. His face was as still as water. Although they were facing an army, they did not panic at all. He commanded the hunting group in an orderly manner. But no one knew how heavy his heart was at this moment. In the past, when the zombies gathered to attack the city on a large scale, their scouts in the wild could detect some movements in advance. However, today, none of their scouts had returned with any news. This was enough to show that tonight's zombies were far stronger than before. They were so powerful that even the scouts couldn't send back any information. And because the scouts did not send back any information, their preparations were somewhat inadequate. So much so that they did not move the people to the underground shelters in advance. It was close to midnight. The light rain gradually turned into heavy rain. The rain poured down in torrents. From time to time, a bolt of lightning would appear in the sky, winding like a dragon. At a certain moment, a thick bolt of lightning tore through the night sky. Among the zombies, an 8-year-old lowly zombie girl slowly stood out. She was wearing a sky-blue princess dress and had a double ponytail. If one looked at her from behind, she was definitely a cute little lowly. But if one looked at her from the front, the left side of her face had been torn open and had been drooping. When she walked, the left side of her face was like a pig's ear, flapping up and down. Her grayish-white eyes stared at the wall in the distance under the lightning. She paused for a few seconds. Suddenly, she raised her right claw and opened her torn mouth. From her throat, she let out a shocking roar. Roar, roar. In the next moment, these tens of thousands of zombies all roared. Accompanied by this deafening roar, all the zombies surged toward the high wall together. On the sentry tower, the base chief saw this and held the giant sword in his hand tightly. He shouted, "Fire! Da-da-da, da-da-da, whoosh, boom." Tongues of fire were constantly spurting out from the shooting holes on the high wall. Those ordinary zombies were suddenly swept to the ground one after another. Their flesh and blood were blown away by the rockets. However, the number of ordinary zombies was close to 10,000. They could not eliminate nearly 10,000 zombies in a short period of time. What's more, there were more than 1,000 strong mutated zombies. Artillery fire could not do anything to them. The distance between the strong mutated zombies and the high wall was quickly closing. On the sentry tower, the base chief ordered loudly, "Psychokinesis, prepare to attack with flying knives. Every psychokinesis, leave a hunter beside them to protect them. The rest of the hunters, go outside the wall and stop the zombies from attacking the wall. Be careful not to leave the range of your telekinesis." Soon, more than 30 hunters jumped down from the wall and lined up outside the wall. After a while, the flood of zombies collided with these 30 hunters. On the wall, Nearly 400 flying knives were like 400 sides of the Grim Reaper, harvesting these zombies. Even if it was a strong mutated zombie, if it was accidentally hit in the head by these flying knives, it would be killed in one blow. And the lowly female zombie stared at the base chief on the sentry tower. In her grayish-white eyes, there was a fierce light. Chapter 101. The hundreds of people at the entrance saw this scene and immediately fled in panic. Zombies. There are zombies. Run. The already chaotic entrance of the fallout shelter became even more chaotic. No one would have thought that when the zombie army besieged the city, almost everyone in the zombie hunter group was transferred to the northeast to defend, and zombies would suddenly appear in the rear. Zombies were not scary, but zombies with culture were scary. Even zombies knew the art of war. And this zombie with a smart look and a mocking smile on its mouth. It was obvious that it was a strong mutated zombie. The soldier with the flashlight saw this, although he was panicking. But at this time he was not thinking about himself, but the thousands of people here. Although he was a little panicked, he still raised his gun and aimed at the smiling zombie. The smiling zombie did not pay attention to the soldier at all. One in each hand, it grabbed a woman and a little girl next to it, turned around and quickly jumped away. The soldier was stunned. All the zombies he had seen before, whether ordinary zombies, mutated zombies, or strong mutated zombies. When they saw humans, they were like hungry wolves seeing lambs, and they directly pounced on them to tear them apart. But this zombie was not right. It did not bite the woman and the little girl. Instead, it grabbed the woman and the little girl, turned around and fled into the darkness. What was going on? At the same time, several more zombies appeared near the fallout shelter. Each of them was a strong mutated zombie. They were all the same as the previous zombie. They did not fight with these soldiers. Instead, they grabbed the people next to them, turned around and jumped into the darkness. In the apartment building next to the zombie hunter group's headquarters. Naturally, Mosher was able to clearly detect all of this. In fact, when he set up the virtual sentry tower, his telekinesis spread out to a radius of 5 kilometers, and he had already detected that there were strong mutated zombies lurking outside the southwest city wall. Mosher felt a little strange in his heart. The behavior of these zombies was very strange. Ordinary zombies could not help but roar when they saw humans. These zombies could clearly see the humans on the sentry tower by the high wall, but they could suppress their impulse and quietly lurk in the trees. It was very abnormal. Mosher did not make a move because he wanted to wait and see what they were going to do. They had been lurking there for more than 3 hours. When the battle on the high wall in the northeast began, the nearby hunters, patrols and corpse hunting teams all went there to reinforce. These more than 100 strong mutated zombies, under the cover of the heavy rain, jumped over the wall. They went all the way to the shelter. At this moment, an even stranger scene occurred. Those thousands of humans were clearly right in front of them, but they forcefully suppressed the urge to bite down. Instead, each zombie grabbed 2 humans, turned around and fled into the darkness. Were they going to capture them and use them as food for the winter? Just as Mosher was puzzled, a zombie saw Mosher's figure from the window. With a roar, he leaped towards Mosher's window. However, as soon as he jumped into the air, bang! A muffled sound was heard. Its entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. If this zombie could dream, he would never have imagined that he would die in the hands of an ordinary human being in such a way. Mosher sighed. Memory plunder could only plunder human memories. But it could not work on zombies. Otherwise, by plundering the memories of these zombies, he should be able to know why they took these humans back. At the same time, within a radius of 1 kilometer, a strong mutated zombie holding 2 women had just passed through the window of a house. His body made a muffled sound. Bang! It was like the sound of a cannon in the water. The 2 women were suddenly thrown to the ground. The 2 knew they were going to die and were terrified. There was even a woman who had long been paralyzed with fear. The other woman still had some strength. She did not know why the zombie suddenly threw her to the ground. She looked up. The night was dark and the rain poured down. Nothing could be seen. She did not have time to think and quickly got up to escape. Her heart was extremely flustered. She took a deep step and a shallow step. She fell to the ground from time to time. She had already foreseen that she would not be able to run a few steps before being caught by the claw. However, she had already escaped 50 meters away. There was still no movement. She escaped another 100 meters. There was still no movement behind her. She felt the darkness and escaped hundreds of meters away. Under the lightning, she saw the warehouse door in front of her open. She quickly hid in and closed the warehouse door. She did not understand what had happened. Did the zombie just let her go like this? At the same time, the other woman finally slowly came back to her senses. There was a trace of strength in her body. Crack. A bolt of lightning flashed. With the reflection of the lightning, she did not see any trace of zombies around her. She did not understand what had happened. Why did the zombie suddenly let her go? But this was not the time to be entangled. Using the last bit of strength in her body, she struggled to get up and ran forward, one step at a time. At the same time, a similar scene was happening to more than 200 people. Bang 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 bang, more than 100 zombies burst into more than 100 clouds of blood mist. With the current strength of Emoshir's telekinesis, these zombies were directly disintegrated. There were no broken limbs, no broken bodies. Their flesh and bones, under the effect of Emoshir's telekinesis, all burst into particles that were not visible to the naked eye. Only when they were together, could a cloud of blood mist be seen. The more than 200 people who were caught felt that they were suddenly thrown to the ground. When they got up, the zombies were nowhere to be seen. They did not have time to investigate further and got up to find a place to hide. At the same time, on the wall in the southeast corner, one of the zombies was running away. This was an 8-year-old lowly zombie. She had a double ponytail and was wearing a sky blue princess dress. Although she was small, her strength had reached level 5 strong mutant zombie. She was the strongest among all the zombies who had sneaked into the base. But at this time she seemed to be panicking. His grayish-white eyes were filled with astonishment. She thought that a large number of zombies attacking the city at the northeast wall would attract attention. She could easily capture a large number of humans with these hundreds of strong mutant zombies. But the result was, when she was about to succeed, she saw the more than 100 strong mutant zombies that she brought, almost at the same time, all burst into a cloud of blood mist. No minced meat. No broken bones. Only blood mist. She had never seen such a method. Even her leader, the level 10 strong mutant zombie, could not do it at all. This was enough to show that there was a hidden powerhouse in the human base. What a despicable human. The only thing she could do at this time was to escape. She could feel that the reason why she was not dead yet was that she was outside the attack range of the hidden powerhouse. If the hidden powerhouse chased after her, she would have no chance to escape at all. So she used a speed of 150 meters per second, shuttling quickly in the heavy rain. However, could she escape? Chapter 102. The night was dark and heavy rain was pouring down. In this rainy night, a little girl was running at high speed. The little girl was about 8 years old and had 2 ponytails. She was wearing a sky blue princess dress. From the front, she looked like a beautiful little loli. But there was a bloody wound behind her neck. Through the wound, one could see the cervical vertebra inside. As her head turned left and right, the cervical vertebra was also constantly turning. It looked exceptionally terrifying. However, at this moment, the little lowly zombie was very panicked. As she ran forward, she would look back from time to time. In the past, she had chased humans countless times. When humans were chased by her, they were like this. As they ran, they would look back from time to time. This time it was her turn. Her gray-white pupils were filled with shock and fear. Soon, she had already passed through the rain and escaped for 2 kilometers. With a leap, she easily jumped over the 3rd wall. She ran forward for another kilometer and crossed the 2nd wall. Then she ran for another kilometer at high speed. She was not far from the 1st wall. She looked back. The hidden powerhouse did not chase after her. She sighed in relief. Under the 1st wall, there were more than 10 soldiers. She did not care about them at all. As long as she jumped over the wall and entered the wilderness outside, she would be safe. Crack! A bolt of lightning cut through the night sky. She was as fast as lightning and stepped over the heads of the soldiers. She jumped onto the wall. As long as she took another step forward, she would be able to escape from the wall. However, in the next moment, whoosh, a black light seemed to be faster than lightning. It instantly cut through the sky and passed through the rain. It hit the head of the little lowly zombie and pierced through her mouth. The huge force sent the little lowly zombie flying for 100 meters. Bang! It was directly nailed to a white poplar tree that was more than a meter thick outside. Just like that, the little lowly zombie faced the tree trunk and hung 10 meters above the ground. It was as if a cute little girl was playing a game of princess kissing prince with the tree. However, on the back of the girl's head, there was a black spear that was more than a meter long. A moment later, the black spear seemed to be decomposed into gas by the rain and disappeared. The girl's body slowly slid down along the tree trunk. He brushed a bloody mark on the bark. Inside the wall, a soldier was shining a flashlight on the top of the wall. The soldier next to him asked, "Is there something wrong with him?" The soldier was puzzled. "I think I saw a girl standing on the wall." Another soldier scolded, "Did you shit your brains out when you were taking a dump? Which girl can jump up a wall that's more than 10 meters high? And in this terrible weather, which girl would run to the top of the wall?" "Are you crazy?" The soldier said, "That's a mutant zombie, a strong mutant zombie." "Oh right, there seems to be a long thorn growing from the back of her head." The other soldiers shook their heads. "I think there's something wrong with your head." The soldier shone his flashlight on the top of the wall but saw nothing. He shook his head himself. It was just a flash of lightning that he suddenly saw it. The time was too short so he couldn't see it clearly. Perhaps he was hallucinating. At the same time, on the second floor of the apartment building next to the hunting group, Emo retracted his gaze from the window. He sighed, "It's raining heavily." Then he went back to the table and picked up the remaining half bottle of beer. He gulped it down. Burp, he let out a long burp. Northeast of the base, outside the wall, the zombies had already gained the upper hand. The hunting group lost 5 hunters. Psychokinesis also had one person's arm scratched by a zombie. Although the arm had been cut off, it was basically useless. He would soon become a zombie. As for the hunters, more than 100 people died and more than 300 were injured. Fighting with zombies, being injured was equivalent to death. At this time, only 200 of the strong mutant zombies were lost. On the sentry tower, the base chief's face was as solemn as the dark rainy night. Tonight's battle, even if they could win in the end, more than half of the hunting group would be killed. At this time in the wilderness outside the high wall, a roar suddenly sounded. Roar, roar, all the zombies heard this roar. They suddenly turned around and retreated into the wilderness. In just over a minute, the nearly 10,000 zombies had all retreated. Only corpses were left on the ground. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? When zombies attacked cities, they basically didn't care about the cost. In the past few sieges, even if they did not have any advantage, they would fight until the last zombie fell. But today they clearly had the advantage. Why did they suddenly retreat? Hao Ren jumped a few times from outside the wall and came to the sentry tower. He said to the base chief, "Chief, why did these bastards suddenly retreat?" The base chief shook his head. There must be something fishy about this. But he could not figure it out for a while. At this time, a soldier under the sentry tower reported, "Chief, zombies sneaked into the base." Hearing this, the chief's face suddenly changed. He finally understood why these zombies suddenly retreated. It was a diversion. Thinking of this, he immediately roared, "Leave half of the hunters and psychokinesis guards. The rest come back with me." Hao Ren's face also changed when he heard this. He cursed, "These bastards, how dare they do this?" Then he jumped down from the sentry tower and was about to return to the base. Behind him, Zhen Shishir also followed. "Hao Ren, I'll go too." Hao Ren did not say anything. He pulled Zhen Shishir up and ran forward quickly. In the apartment building, Emo saw that it was already past 12 o'clock. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." The system's voice quickly came, "Frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in event, kill the strong mutated zombie who abducted humans. Sign in reward, memory plunder upgraded." Looking carefully at the skill description, Frowny face memory plunder. Use psychic power to plunder the memory of any creature. Note, the brain of a creature whose memory is plundered will be damaged to a certain extent. In serious cases, it will cause mental retardation. Use with caution. Emo looked at the skill description and couldn't help but chuckle. The previous memory plunder could only plunder the memory of humans. But in the base it was not very useful. Zombies and mutant beasts knew more about the wilderness than anyone else. Previously he was still worried about how to obtain a large amount of information about the wilderness. But he didn't expect the system to upgrade memory plunder so quickly. With this skill, the next step would be to start with the zombies and mutated beasts to find out the situation in the dragon ruins. Only after figuring out the situation there would he have the confidence to make a move. Otherwise, if he went rashly and there was a super mutated zombie there, wouldn't he be sending himself to death for nothing? After doing all this, Emo yawned. He closed his eyes in satisfaction. Not long after, snoring sounds could be heard. However, not long after, the door was suddenly knocked open with a bang. A black shadow instantly jumped into the room. Emo, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly opened his eyes. Chapter 103. Emosher had just fallen asleep when the door was suddenly kicked open. A figure suddenly jumped into the room. Emosher suddenly opened his eyes. The figure stopped in the middle of the room and said loudly, "Emosher, Emosher." It turned out to be Hao Ren. Emosher replied, "I'm here." Hao Ren strode into the bedroom and was relieved to see that Emosher was fine. Then he laughed, "You're so relaxed. Didn't you hear the alarm in the base?" Emosher yawned and got up. "I'm too tired today. I slept too soundly." Hao Ren was speechless. "Just stay in the bedroom and don't run around." A zombie broke in. Emosher nodded, "Okay." Hao Ren said a few words and quickly left. Emosher closed the door and went back to sleep. As for the others, they were naturally not in the mood to sleep. Most of them had already moved to the underground shelter. Even those who didn't enter the underground shelter were hiding in their own houses and didn't dare to breathe. But what made them feel strange was that the base chief led the hunting group to search in the heavy rain for most of the night. But they couldn't find any zombies. It wasn't until dawn that the heavy rain finally stopped. The sun was shining brightly. The world that had been washed by the heavy rain for a night was exceptionally clear. The hunting group found some clues at this time. They found more than 100 pieces of clothes. As for other clues, they found nothing. The base chief gathered all the people who were caught last night. First, he gave them a physical examination to confirm that they were not infected with the virus. Then he questioned them one by one. A woman recalled the situation last night. She seemed to still have some lingering fear. She said in a trembling voice, "At that time, I was caught by the zombie and kept running in the rain. But I don't know why it suddenly threw me on the ground. I quickly got up and ran. I thought that I would be caught again after a few steps, but I didn't expect that it didn't catch up with me until I ran to the warehouse." Another man recalled the situation last night and said, "I was about the same. The zombie suddenly threw me down. I looked around but it was dark and I couldn't see anything. I tried to run a few steps but didn't see the zombie chasing after me, so I quickly hid in the training room." What the other said was basically the same. From the moment they were thrown away, no one had seen a single zombie. It was as if those zombies had all evaporated in an instant. But what's with these scraps of cloth? The base chief frowned as he looked at the tattered pieces of clothing in front of him. It looked like there was a bomb in the zombies' bodies that suddenly exploded. However, no matter how much he exploded, he should have at least found some flesh and bones. However, even after searching the entire neighborhood, they could not find even a single piece of meat or bone. This puzzled everyone in the base. Now, it seemed that the zombies in the northeast had launched a large-scale attack just to attract the attention of the base. It was so that the zombies could easily sneak into the base and capture the humans. But why did these powerful mutated zombies suddenly disappear? There were also pieces of cloth left on the ground. No matter how good a person was at reasoning, they would not be able to figure it out even if they scratched their heads. At the same time, on the sentry tower by the wall in the southeast corner of the base, a zombie hunter was using binoculars to observe the outside of the wall. At a certain moment, his eyes suddenly focused. He saw that 100 meters away from the wall, under a big tree, a little girl was lying there. The zombie hunter's heart skipped a beat. He took a closer look. He saw that there seemed to be a hole in the back of the girl's head. He quickly reported this discovery to his superiors. Not long after, a few hunters came to the outside of the wall. They brought the little girl's body back. At this time, everyone realized that this was not a little girl but a little zombie. When the lowly zombie's corpse was brought into the encirclement, a soldier suddenly yelled out, "It's her." Everyone looked at the soldier. The soldier strode to the little zombie's body. He turned his head back with some excitement and said to the other soldiers, "Do you remember that I told you last night that I seemed to see a little girl standing on the wall? It's her." Hearing this, the soldiers were also surprised. "Yes, we didn't believe it at that time." The soldier said again, "At that time, although it was just a flash of lightning and I didn't see it clearly, I saw that she was wearing this. And at that time, I saw a long thorn more than 1 meter long on the back of her head, and she was about to jump out. From the looks of it, it shouldn't be some sort of thorn. Instead, it should be something that pierced her head." Hearing this, the hunters hurriedly reported this to their superiors. In the end, the chief of the base received the news and rushed over. He invited a few experts to analyze the holes left on the big tree outside, the holes on the little zombie's head, and combined with what the soldier said, they roughly reconstructed the situation at that time. However, the experts were somewhat in disbelief. The chief of the base saw that something was wrong. He asked, "What's wrong?" An expert pushed his glasses and said, "Chief, we don't dare to say anything." The chief of the base said, If you have something to say, just say it. The expert with glasses glanced at the other experts, and the other experts nodded. The expert with glasses then said, according to the situation at the scene combined with the soldier's description, we speculated that when the zombie climbed over the wall and wanted to jump out of the base, someone threw a javelin from about 5 kilometers away and pierced through her head. Moreover, the huge inertia of the javelin carried it 100 meters away and nailed it to the tree outside. But the javelin was pulled out later. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. This was too ridiculous. A hunter shook his head. Throwing a javelin from 5 kilometers away? Although any hunter can do it, who would have the accuracy to do it? Another hunter added, besides, the javelin flew for 5 kilometers and carried a zombie for 100 meters. How much strength does it take to do that? Even the level 5 hunter Hao Ren can't do that. The other experts nodded. The expert with glasses pushed his glasses again and said, that's why we didn't dare to say anything. Because we think that this result is too ridiculous. But according to the analysis of the scene, it was like that at that time. The chief of the base frowned. At some point he suddenly remembered what Jin Shishir said before. When Jin Shishir and the others came back, they reported that they always felt that there was a strong person ahead of them. This strong person killed a lot of zombies and mutated beasts along the way, but they didn't hear any sounds of fighting. Later he specially ordered all the psychokinesis to secretly investigate the entire base several times. But they didn't find any strong person at all. But now, it seemed that there really was a mysterious strong person in the base. Chapter 104. While everyone in Base C2 was confused by what had happened last night, Lin Fan and the others were still in a daze. In the east of the base, more than 100 kilometers away, there was an abandoned city. This abandoned city was very different from other abandoned cities. Half of the buildings in the entire city were factories. But the most important difference was that the plants here were not green, but a faint blood-red color. The weeds on the ground, the big trees by the road, and the vines hanging down from the roof were all a faint blood-red color. Under the sunlight, the entire city looked very strange. Before the outbreak of the virus, this was once an important industrial base. But who would have thought that this was the source of the virus outbreak? The X2 virus started here and swept the world. At this time, in a factory. Hundreds of zombies were standing in the open space of the factory. Among them was a little lowly zombie with the left side of her face drooping. A zombie with a beard stood on the corridor of the second floor, looking down at the more than 100 zombies. On the shelf next to him, there was a strange owl about 2 meters tall squatting. The owl had no skin on its whole body. The bloody flesh was exposed to the air. A pair of wings was like a bat tucked behind its back. The bearded zombie let out a roar from his throat. You all deserve to die. How could you fail? The other zombies did not dare to say a word. Only the little lowly zombie responded with a roar from her throat. Leader, we don't know what happened. We have attracted all the attention in the base as you ordered. My sister brought other zombies and successfully sneaked into the base. But I suddenly received news that my sister was killed. I saw from afar that she was nailed to a tree by a black javelin. Despicable humans, despicable reptiles. Speaking of this, the little lowly zombie's gray-white eyes showed a hint of hatred. The bearded zombie roared, you mean, in this base there is a human whose strength is far stronger than a level 5 strong mutated zombie? The little lowly zombie roared in a low voice in response, it's very possible. At this time, the mutated owl next to him turned its blood-red eyes. It made a low hiss in its throat. Leader, if there really is such a powerhouse among the humans, it will be very troublesome. We have to find a way to deal with him. The bearded zombie nodded. Do you have any ideas? The variant owl said in a hoarse voice, this is the source of the virus. All the zombies and mutated beasts here are much stronger than those in other places. If we can set up a trap and lure that human expert over. The bearded zombie pondered for a moment and roared, you think of a way. The mutant owl flapped its wings and screeched, yes, Chief. In Base C2. Unable to find out the whole story for the time being, the leader could only give up for now. Everyone returned to their posts and continued working. However, in the leader's heart he was secretly guessing who that mysterious expert was. Over the next few days, the materials for the base's corpse farm were almost ready. Under Mo Shir's guidance, they began to build the corpses. Hao Ren also brought a few hunters to help. With the help of the zombie hunters, their progress was very fast. In a short span of 5 days, the entire hunting ground had been built. Later they caught a few zombies and brought back a dozen pigs. Mo sure brought a few disciples and taught them how to feed the zombies and what to pay attention to. In fact, as long as they were brave, careful, and had hands, they could feed the zombies. Therefore these disciples quickly learned how to feed the zombies. In this way, Mo sure became the leader of the corpse farm. However, as the leader he was completely a hands-off boss. Almost everything was handed over to his disciples to handle. He himself was very free. He either strolled around the base or lay on the recliner in the yard to bask in the sun. At the same time, the laboratory on the other side was also being built. However, the construction of the laboratory was not as smooth as the corpse farm. The precision instruments needed by the laboratory were all rare goods nowadays. There was also a shortage of researchers. In desperation, the leader of the base could only send a few helicopters to other bases to see if he could borrow the instruments and talents. Mo sure did not care much about these. He was secretly planning in his heart. Ordinary zombies did not have any memories. He had to catch a few mutated zombies back to inquire about the situation in the dragon ruins. On this day, Mo sure received a piece of news from Hao Ren. Last night, 2 people were taken away by strong mutated zombies. Hao Ren sighed and said, "You have to close the doors and windows when you sleep at night." Mo sure joked, "That is a strong mutated zombie, what's the use of closing the doors and windows?" Hao Ren smiled bitterly, "It's better than being seen by a strong mutated zombie. In short, you have to be careful at night." For the next 5 days, although the base strengthened its security. However, there were strong mutated zombies in every corner of the base. However, these strong mutated zombies did not come in groups. They acted alone. The strength of a strong mutated zombie was equivalent to a hunter. With such strength acting alone at night, it was basically impossible to be discovered. This also made the people in the base feel uneasy. Every day they were on tenterhooks. Everyone was worried that they would be suddenly taken away at night. Compared to this, the leader of the base was more worried about what these zombies were going to do with so many humans. Moreover, these strong mutated zombies were almost treating the base as their backyard, and they could enter and leave at will. What if one day they did not just take away 1 or 2 people but directly started to infect? The consequences would be unimaginable. Moving the people to the underground shelter was of course a way. However, the underground shelter's capacity was limited. At most, it could only accommodate 1/10 of the humans in the base. What about the remaining 9/10? Because of this, the leader of the base had been so worried that he had not slept for a few days. On this day it was night again. The leader of the base had sent out all the members of the hunting group to patrol various positions in the base. However, they did not expect that after the members of the hunting group left, the area around the base was empty. Around 3 o'clock that night. The moon was not bright but the stars were bright. The light wind swayed the leaves. A level 4 strong mutated zombie quietly approached the hunter group. He faced the wind and stretched his nose. He could smell the scent of many humans in the apartment building next to the hunting group. A hint of excitement flashed through his grayish-white pupils. Then he planned to break into a room on the first floor. However, at this moment, the level 4 strong mutated zombie suddenly felt that something was wrong. When he turned his head, he saw that a human was standing behind him. Chapter 105. The level 4 strong mutant zombie was about to jump into the apartment building to catch the person. But at a certain moment, its footsteps suddenly stopped. It suddenly turned around. It saw that behind it there was a human standing there unknowingly. Its eyes suddenly flashed with a touch of horror. As a level 4 strong mutant zombie, its perception was also very strong. Not to mention humans, even if a flea appeared within 10 meters of it, it would be able to sense it easily. But at this time, this human quietly appeared behind it, and it actually did not feel anything. If it did not have a sense of danger in its heart, it would not have known that this person appeared. It could be seen that this human strength was far beyond its own. Thinking of this, the strong mutant zombie did not hesitate. It turned around and wanted to escape. However, just as it turned around, its mind suddenly went blank. In the next moment, its eyes turned from lively to dull. As if it was an idiot without any intelligence. At this time, except for the fact that its body was far stronger than ordinary zombies, and its speed and strength were far superior to ordinary zombies, in other aspects, it was no different from an ordinary zombie. At this time, Mo sure sensed that not far away, there was a level 4 hunter from the body hunters coming over. With a thought, he activated Zombie Summon. He issued an order to the zombie. The zombie suddenly roared, turned around the corner, and rushed towards the member of the body hunters. However, without self-consciousness, the strong mutant zombie, which only had a bloodthirsty instinct, was no match for the level 4 hunter. In a few rounds it was defeated by the level 4 hunter. Emosher thought to himself, this zombie summon is not bad. After obtaining this skill he almost never used it. Now he was just trying out this skill. At this time the level 4 hunter killed the strong mutant zombie. The movement here also attracted the attention of the others. They all rushed over here. This was the first time they successfully killed a strong mutant zombie in the base. The other members of the hunter group congratulated the hunter. Amazing, my brother. You are the first to kill a strong mutant zombie in the base. Who said that our base is the backyard of their strong mutant zombies? Didn't we just kill one? The hunter nodded and responded to the crowd. However, he was secretly muttering in his heart. Although this zombie's speed and strength had reached the level of a level 4 strong mutation, it was still a level 4 mutant. But he still felt that something was off. He took him down in a few moves. Under normal circumstances, this was simply impossible. However, he only muttered in his heart and did not say it out loud. At this moment, Emosher had already returned to his room. In his mind he was looking through the memories that he had just plundered. The memory plunder skill could be used on humans, zombies and mutant beasts. It was quite useful. From these memories, Emosher learned that there was a city full of blood-red plants 100 kilometers away. That was the origin of the virus. He also knew that the strongest person there was a level 10 mutated zombie. Other than that, there were also several level 9 mutated zombies. More than a dozen level 8 mutated zombies. As for the strong mutant zombies below level 7, there were more than 3,000 of them. And the number of mutated zombies reached more than 100,000. The remaining 2 million were all ordinary zombies. When Emosher discovered this, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. The strength of the zombies in this city was actually so strong. What made him puzzled was that the strength of these zombies could easily break through the C2 base. Why hadn't they made a move yet? Adhering to the principle of not thinking about it if he couldn't figure it out, Emosher no longer bothered about this. What he thought in his heart was, according to the information he had obtained now, there were no super mutated zombies in that city. Then things would be easy to handle. Destroying the zombies in this city would give him tens of millions of evolution points. Then, if he continued to head east, not far away would be the Dragon Ruins. He would definitely be able to sign in and get good things in that city. Emosher couldn't help but look forward to it. However, it was obvious that he couldn't go tonight. He had just checked too many memories of that strong mutated zombie, and his head was a little swollen. He should wait until tomorrow night to adjust to his peak state. Thinking of this, Emosher didn't sign in immediately. Instead, he planned to leave this signing opportunity for tomorrow night. That day Emosher slept for almost half a day. Around 10 o'clock at night, he changed into the chameleon camouflage uniform. The color of his body changed into the same black as the night. The camouflage uniform also turned black. When he jumped out of the window and entered the night, his whole person blended into the night. Soon he leaped over 3 walls. With Emosher's current strength, coupled with the chameleon camouflage uniform, even if he passed by 4 or 5 meters away from the soldiers guarding the wall, they would only feel a gust of wind blowing past. They couldn't see Emosher at all. After exiting the first wall and entering the forest, Emosher let go of his hands and feet and rushed towards the east. 1 kilometer per step. 100 kilometers, only 100 steps. Of course, because of the difference in terrain, climbing mountains and wading through rivers, a little time was wasted. But even so, it only took him 5 minutes to reach. At this time he arrived at the edge of the city. Under the support of the blood-red demon pupil, he looked towards the city. He saw that the entire city was shrouded in a thick corpse aura. The corpse aura was so thick that it could almost solidify. Before the outbreak of the virus X, there were 2 million people in this city. Obviously, these 2 million people had all been turned into zombies. However, Emosher didn't have the slightest fear of this. With his strength, he could do whatever he wanted in this city. He slowed down his footsteps. He entered the city from the highway toll station in the west. Around the toll station, there were more than a dozen zombies working as toll collectors. Like lonely ghosts, they wandered on the overgrown road. After more than 20 years, their clothes had long been weathered. Some only had a few pieces of cloth hanging on their bodies. Some of them were completely naked. Their greenish-black bodies were already shriveled like air-dried bacon. A few zombies were lying on the ground or sitting in the corner, motionless. They seemed to have been dead for a long time. When Emosher walked over, those zombies suddenly looked like wolves who had been hungry for more than 10 days and saw a lamb. They roared and pounced towards Emosher. Even the zombies who were lying on the ground and sitting in the corner of the room were not affected. At this time they slowly got up and pounced towards Emosher. They looked very ferocious. However, when they were more than 10 meters away from Emosher, their bodies had already exploded. Bang 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 bang, they exploded into broken limbs and broken bodies on the ground. Soon, the movement here attracted other zombies not far away and they all rushed here. In just more than 10 minutes, the surrounding zombies had reached more than 1,000. Emosher faced these more than 1,000 zombies and slowly moved forward. He spread out his telekinesis. All the zombies that came within 1,000 meters of him exploded. Bang 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 bang. Chapter 106. In the clear night sky, the stars were bright. Under this starry sky, in a city covered by blood-red plants, Emosher slowly moved forward. And his body was like a magnet. Tens of thousands of zombies were attracted to him from all directions, and they rushed towards him. Looking down from the sky, it would feel that Emosher was like a lonely boat surrounded by a flood. It would be destroyed in the blink of an eye. However, the reality was that when those zombies entered a radius of 1,000 meters, their bodies strangely exploded. Bang 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 bang, whether it was ordinary zombies, mutated zombies, or strong mutated zombies. Without exception, all of them exploded into several pieces and flew far away. Looking down from the sky, one would see that Emosher's surroundings formed a huge circle with a radius of 1,000 meters. None of the zombies could enter the circle. The circle slowly moved forward. Behind it was a huge corpse belt that was 2,000 meters wide. This corpse belt was covered with broken limbs and body parts. It was like hell. Emosher did not shake these corpses into powder. After all, if that was the case, it would consume more energy than now. There were 2 million zombies in this city. If they were all shaken into powder, his telekinesis might not be able to hold on. Of course, he was also very cautious. Occasionally, he would let in a strong mutated zombie, plunder their memories, to compare information, thus to prevent any negligence. In his mind, there was a constant notification: frowny face killed zombie, evolution points +1, killed level 3 mutated zombie, evolution points +300, killed level 2 strong mutated zombie, evolution points +2,000. In the beginning he was a little excited for a while. But as time passed, his mind was constantly refreshed. He was already numb. At the same time, at the top of a 13-story building in the center of the city, a bearded zombie and 5 other level 9 strong mutated zombies were watching all of this from afar. Their eyes were filled with shock. Beside them, a huge mutated owl flashed a cold light in its blood-red eyes. A level 9 mutant zombie roared in his throat, "Let's go! There is actually such a strong person among the humans." Another level 9 mutant zombie roared, "Let's go! Previously we said that we were going to attack the human base. Fortunately the king did not send an order. Otherwise, it didn't continue, but the other mutated zombies knew what it meant. Indeed, if they had rashly attacked the base they would probably be dead by now. The owl beside him screeched hoarsely and said, "Although this human is powerful, as long as we lure him to the blood pool, we can kill him." The bearded zombie withdrew his shocked gaze and nodded. "The blood pool is what we're relying on. Are you guys ready?" The mutant zombies nodded. "All right." The bearded zombie nodded. "Then let's go." Then he said to the mutant owl beside him, "You once said that he had killed a level 10 strong mutated zombie?" The owl said hoarsely, "Yes, Chief. But don't worry, the situation this time is different. This is where the virus originated. Here the human strength would be weakened. The strength of the zombies and mutant beasts will be greatly enhanced." The bearded zombie nodded. "Yes, you should go too." The owl said respectfully, "Yes, Chief." Then a pair of bat-like wings stretched out, flapped them, and flew into the distance. When Emosher was moving forward, his speed was not fast at first. He would catch a strong mutated zombie from time to time to scout for information. A moment later, through the memory of a strong mutated zombie, he found a piece of news that made him slightly surprised. These zombies actually set up a trap to lure him to kill him. The reason why those strong mutated zombies went to the base every night to catch humans, one reason was that they did catch humans for other purposes. Another important reason was to lure him here. At this time in this city, these zombies had already set up a trap, waiting for him to jump in. However, Emosher had already investigated their plan clearly through the memory of this strong mutated zombie. He couldn't help but laugh. In the face of absolute strength, any conspiracy is a joke. After finding out everything he needed, he began to speed up. The speed of those zombies being killed also became faster and faster. The speed of the evolution points in his mind also became faster and faster. About 20 minutes later, he had already swept through half of the city. And at this time, those zombies seemed to have learned to be smart. Especially those strong mutated zombies. After they saw Wuxia, they no longer blindly rushed forward. Instead, they fled to the foot of the mountain to the east of the city. Even hundreds of strong mutated zombies fled in that direction. Wuxia couldn't help but laugh. They were clearly luring him to go there. Alright, since it's like this, then I'll do as you wish. A moment later, following these strong mutated zombies, he arrived at the foot of the mountain. At this time, Wuxia looked at the evolution points in his mind. He had already gained more than 10 million evolution points from the killing just now. Now the total evolution points had already reached 73 million. As long as he eliminated all the zombies in the city, reaching 20 million would not be a problem. He estimated that as long as he reached 100 million evolution points, the system should be able to upgrade again. He shifted his attention from his mind to the outside world. At the foot of the mountain there were more than 30 factories. Wuxia did not immediately go in. Instead, he took out the virtual sentry tower and placed it next to him. Just as the virtual sentry tower was set up, an urgent alarm sounded. Beep 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 beep. However, Wuxia only used his telekinesis to scan once and did not pay attention to the alarm. Under his telekinesis investigation, those 30 factories, in each courtyard, there was a blood pool with a diameter of 50 meters. Around these blood pools, there were more than 3,000 strong mutated zombies, all of them jumping in. Seeing this, Wuxia smiled indifferently. More than 3,000 strong mutated zombies, even with the bonus of the blood pool, it was impossible for them to break through to super mutated zombies. As long as they could not break through to super mutated zombies, they were all ants in front of him. No, they should all be evolution points. Thinking of this, he took a step forward and arrived at a factory. He saw in the blood pool in the factory courtyard. There were about 100 zombies. However, at this time, these zombies' bodies and faces were covered with finger-thick blood-red arms. From a distance, these blood-red arms were like blood vessels, crawling all over these zombies' bodies. And these zombies' bodies quickly became taller and bigger. Soon, almost every zombie reached a height of more than 20 meters. Their strength had basically reached level 8 or even level 9 strong mutated zombies. Among them, there were even a few strong mutated zombies that reached a height of 50 meters. Their strength had already reached level 10 strong mutated zombies. Wuxia used his telekinesis to scan. In all the blood pools, all 3,000 strong mutated zombies had reached level 8 and above. There were also more than 30 50-meter tall level 10 strong mutated zombies. In addition, there were also more than 1,000 strong mutated beasts in the blood pool. The strength of each strong mutated beast, under the support of the blood pool, also reached level 8 and above. If such a force wanted to crush those bases, none of them would be able to last more than 10 minutes. Wuxia's telekinesis quickly found these two weaknesses. In the next moment he exerted force in several directions. Rip! This level 10 mutant zombie was torn into pieces in an instant. At the same time around Wuxia, the remaining 3,000 strong mutant zombies and 1,000 strong mutant beasts were also experiencing the same thing. Rip, 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 at almost the same time. They were all torn apart, including the 80-meter tall strong mutant zombie. Even all the trees, stones, and factories within a radius of 1,000 meters were torn into pieces. Flesh and blood accompanied by dust flew all over the sky. What was even more abnormal was that the ground within a radius of 1,000 meters was torn apart inch by inch. As for those blood pools, naturally they couldn't escape the fate of being torn apart. The blood in the blood pools flowed along the cracks and quickly flowed away. The thousands of small arms in the blood pools that were like blood vessels also quickly retracted back to the ground. Tear of Doomsday. The power of a tear was actually so terrifying. In the face of Tear of Doomsday, there was nothing that couldn't be solved with a tear. The only way to avoid it was to have a stronger telekinesis than Wuxia. But now on Earth, was there any creature stronger than Wuxia's telekinesis? The answer was no. So, from this point of view, Wuxia could be said to be invincible at this time. At the top of a building in the distance, the mutant owl's eyes were originally cold, and it had been paying attention to Emosher's every move. It seemed to have seen that Emosher was about to be torn into pieces by the more than 4,000 mutant creatures. However, at this moment, its blood-red eyes were filled with shock. Was this human already so strong? He directly used his telekinesis to tear apart the more than 4,000 strong mutant creatures that had been strengthened by the blood pool. Even the trees, stones, and buildings were torn apart. Even the ground was torn apart with cracks. This human was simply more beastly than us beasts. Thinking of this, it didn't dare to stay for even a second longer. It flapped a pair of bat-like wings and was about to fly into the distance. However, at this moment, whoosh, puff, a ray of black light instantly attacked. It directly pierced through the mutant owl's head. Then he brought the mutated owl over 100 meters and nailed it to the roof of another building. A moment later, Emosher's figure suddenly appeared beside the mutant owl's corpse. Previously, he had noticed a corpse aura on the roof of the distant building. Although this corpse aura wasn't considered strong, it was only a level 1 mutant beast, but it gave him a sense of familiarity. It seemed that he had seen this corpse aura at the broken bridge at the dam outside the C1 base. Later, when he was at the C9 base, he also saw this corpse aura. Now it was the third time he had seen it. Then he took a closer look and found that it was a mutant owl. He immediately used the Sky Splitter Dragon Spear to kill it. At this moment, he came to the mutant owl's corpse and used his telekinesis to carefully examine it. He found that there seemed to be something wrong with the mutant owl's heart. It was clearly an owl, but it had a human heart. The heart was as shriveled as air-dried bacon. After carefully examining it for a moment, he couldn't find anything. He shook his head. He used his telekinesis. Bang! The owl's corpse exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Including the shriveled heart, it also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Then he stayed here for a full 5 minutes. Seeing that nothing strange happened, he rubbed his temples that were swollen due to the excessive consumption of telekinesis. He leaped and jumped in the direction of the remaining zombies. However, there was nothing strange about the owl, but there was something strange about the 80-meter-tall zombie. The flesh and blood in its body wriggled. Its bones were also constantly cracking. After a moment, it actually gathered into a strong mutant zombie that was more than 20 meters tall. Then it jumped out of the previous corpse and hurriedly fled to the east. Emosher, who was cleaning up the zombies, detected this. However, he only glanced in that direction and didn't pay attention to it anymore. Obviously, after the zombie got out of the corpse, it should have gone to the dragon ruins. It just so happened that he was going to the dragon ruins later. He would let it run for a few kilometers first. Chapter 108. For the time being, Emosher didn't pay attention to the strong variant zombie. He continued to use his telekinesis to harvest the remaining zombies in the city. Another 20 minutes later. Finally, the 2 million zombies in the city were cleared. At this time, the city was completely quiet. It was as silent as death. Even the chirping of the insects had disappeared. More than 2 million zombies were torn apart, filling the entire city with a layer of blood mist. This kind of blood mist was not corpse gas. Corpse gas only appeared on the bodies of living zombies or mutated beasts. It was not visible to the human eye. But this layer of blood mist could be seen with the naked eye. The strong smell of blood went straight into Emosher's nostrils. At the same time, the evolution points in his mind finally stopped increasing. He estimated that he could get more than 10 million evolution points in this city. But the strong mutated beasts and zombies in the blood pool were all very high leveled. Just there alone he gained 35 million evolution points. In addition to the other mutated zombies and ordinary zombies, he gained more than 46 million evolution points. In addition to the 73 million from before, his current total evolution points had reached 73 million. It was not far from 100 million. Emosher rubbed his swollen and painful temples. He took out 2 bottles of brain cell recovery medicine and drank them. After a while, he felt a cool and comfortable feeling in his head. The swelling and painful feeling quickly eased. In just 5 minutes, the swelling and pain in his temples had completely disappeared. His telekinesis had already recovered to its peak state. Then he said in his mind, "System, sign in. Sign in successful. Sign in event. Kill 2 million zombies. Sign in reward. Zombie puppet." Emosher looked at the skill description. Zombie puppet. Using the flesh and blood of zombies to condense into a zombie puppet. The more flesh and blood of zombies, the more zombie puppets condensed, and the stronger they will be. The strongest can reach level 10 strong mutated zombies. Emosher nodded. The skill was not bad. In some cases when he couldn't do it himself he could let the puppet do it for him. After doing this he came to a school. With a sweep of his telekinesis, he found that there were a total of 30 humans in the 15 classrooms of the school. Apparently, these humans were the ones that the zombies had captured from the base. There were 2 people in each classroom, 1 male and 1 female. Through the memories he had plundered, Emosher learned the reason why the zombies had locked those people up. They actually wanted to use these humans to reproduce. If zombies don't eat meat for a long time, their bodies will slowly dry up. Even strong mutant zombies were no exception. It's just that strong mutated zombies can last longer than ordinary zombies. Therefore, these zombies had already started experimenting with raising human beings in captivity. If their experiment was successful, it would spread throughout the wastelands. Keep all humans in captivity and let them breed. That way the zombies would have an endless supply of food. Emosher was also secretly surprised. These zombies were getting smarter and smarter. It seemed that he had to break through his limits as soon as possible and increase his strength. He activated his telekinesis and blasted open the door of the classroom where the humans were locked. Then he ignored these humans. Zombie puppet skill was activated. The flesh and blood of the surrounding zombies suddenly seemed to be alive and began to wriggle. Then many thin hair-like tentacles grew on these flesh and blood. The tentacles between every 2 pieces of flesh and blood intertwined with each other and pulled the 2 pieces of flesh together, forming a piece of flesh and blood. After a while, the flesh and blood within 1,000 meters condensed into a huge zombie that was 80 meters tall. This zombie had a pair of thick horns that were 10 meters long. There were 6 arms on its body. Its 2 legs were like the trunk of a giant tree. It looked exactly the same as the strongest level 10 strong mutant zombie that he had seen before. Emosher looked with the blood demon's eye. He saw that the zombie puppet's corpse aura was exactly the same as the 80-meter-tall strong evolved zombie that he had killed before. At the same time, the zombie puppet's level also appeared in his mind. Species, zombie puppet. Level 10 strong mutant zombie. A smile appeared on Emosher's face. He activated his telekinesis. This level 10 strong mutant zombie ran quickly towards the east. Boom, boom, boom. Every time this guy ran, the ground seemed to tremble. Emosher followed behind it from a distance. With this big guy in front of him, there would be a lot less danger. Not long after he left. In the education of the abandoned school, the 30 humans saw the classroom door that suddenly flew in. All of them were frightened. Several women almost all cried out. They had been captured for several days. Those zombies did not kill them nor did they eat them. Instead they sent some wild mountain fruits, meat and canned food that had been stored for a long time. This made them feel even more strange. They had always heard that zombies ate humans. When had they ever seen zombies serving humans? Tonight, the zombies in the entire city were roaring. At the foot of the mountain in the distance, there were constant roars that shook the sky. It was as if the zombies in the entire city had rioted. This caused them to be filled with terror. At this time, the door was blasted open and they were all completely desperate. Those zombies were finally going to attack them. In front of these powerful zombies, they were completely lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They could already imagine the scene of them being torn to pieces. This made their hearts tremble and their bodies tremble. Many people were so scared that they were paralyzed on the ground, unable to move at all. But after a full 5 minutes, there was no more movement outside. There was no scene of zombies rushing in as they had imagined. 2 bold men quietly poked their heads out to take a look. The entire city was dead silent. Only the strong smell of blood went straight into their nostrils. They gathered their courage and went down the teaching building. Then they saw a scene that they would never forget. In the school, outside the school, on the road, broken limbs and body parts were almost everywhere. On the walls, on the ground, on the weeds, there were bloodstains everywhere. The entire city was like hell. The few of them looked at each other. They all saw the shock and fear in each other's eyes. What exactly happened? All the zombies in the entire city were torn to pieces. Humans definitely did not have such terrifying strength. In panic, they quickly returned to the classroom and called out all the others. 30 people together fled out of the city. Since these zombies were all dead, they could take the opportunity to escape back to the base. Although this place was very far from the base, it was very likely that mutated beasts would appear on the road. But in this Azura-like city they really could not stay any longer. This place was really too strange and too terrifying. At the same time, on the top of a building, The blood that had exploded into a ball did not dry up. Instead, many tentacles grew out. These tentacles slowly wriggled, entangled, and slowly connected together. Then, some flesh and blood grew on these tentacles. After a full half an hour, a fist-sized, dry heart condensed. Then, all the tentacles on the surface of the heart retracted into the heart. The whole dry heart lay on the roof, motionless, as if waiting for some unlucky mutated beast to come one day. Chapter 109. At night, the stars were shining brightly. In the wilderness, a human and a zombie were running quickly towards the east. The zombie was 80 meters tall and was definitely a giant. Behind him was a human with light footsteps. Such a pair was running in the wilderness. The scene was absolutely strange. At this time, Mo had already run for more than 30 kilometers to the east. The scene around him gradually changed. All the plants had turned blood red again. And the further he went, the heavier the blood red color became. On the ground, some blood red vines would occasionally appear. At first, Mo thought that these were just ordinary vines that had been stained with blood red. However, when he passed by, those blood red vines seemed to be faintly moving. He couldn't help but slow down his pace. Although from the memories of those zombies, he knew that there were at most level 10 mutated zombies in the dragon ruins. Nothing could pose a threat to him. But he still had to be careful. He walked forward for another few kilometers. The trees and grass around him had already turned blood red. The sanguisurincus on the ground gradually became thicker. They were already as thick as a human's arm. When Mo passed by, those sanguisurincus would actually be like snakes, constantly probing towards him. It seemed that they wanted to entangle him. Mo exhaled. He had to take off his camouflage uniform. With a thought, a crack quickly appeared between the shoulder blades on his back. A pair of bat-like wings stretched out from the crack. And they grew with the wind, quickly growing to a width of 5 meters. Then, with a flap of the wings, he flew into the air. On the ground, those snake-like sanguisurincus couldn't entangle Mo and could only retreat to the ground. Mo looked at the pair of blood-red wings and then looked at his naked upper body. He sighed helplessly. This pair of wings looked very cool. But if he had to take off his clothes every time he stretched out, it would make people feel very uncomfortable. Those who knew would understand that he was about to spread his wings and fly. Those who didn't know would think that he was trying to do something. Mo flapped his wings and continued flying towards the east. On the ground, the zombie puppet strode towards the east. The sanguisurincus on the ground wouldn't attack the zombie puppet. More than 10 minutes later, the zombie puppet brought Mo to the dragon ruins without a hitch. Mo took out the map and compared it with the surrounding landscape. He couldn't help but feel a little excited. This was the dragon ruins marked on the map. However, at this moment he looked down at the ground. All the plants in the surroundings were so red that they looked like they could drip blood. Sanguisurincus as thick as thighs crisscrossed the ground. Even the ground had turned blood red. The air was filled with a bloody mist. It looked like a blood-red world. His gaze followed the sanguisurincus on the ground. 1,000 meters ahead there was a huge stadium. But at this time the walls of this huge stadium had turned blood red. Thick sanguisurincus were crawling on the walls. What surprised Mo the most was that there were hundreds of huge sarcomas growing on the entire stadium. They completely covered the sky above the stadium. It was as if hundreds of huge sarcoma-shaped ceilings had been placed over the stadium. The surface of these sarcomas was covered with sanguisurincus with a diameter of more than 1 meter. Every sarcoma was like a human heart. They would actually beat once every 10 seconds. It was Mosher's first time seeing such a thing. There were hundreds of strong mutated zombies around the stadium. They surrounded the huge sarcomas. It was as if they were protecting it. Mosher's pupils turned blood red as he looked at the huge sarcomas. A line of words appeared in his mind: frowny face virus hive. The foundation of all mutated creatures, the complete body of the blood pool. Every virus hive has its own consciousness. All virus hives in the world have the same consciousness. It turned out that those blood pools could grow. When they grew to a certain extent, they would become virus hives. What surprised Mosher the most was that this virus hive actually had its own consciousness. And the consciousness of all the virus hives in the world could be connected. That was amazing. The virus hives in the southern hemisphere could directly know the situation of the virus hives in the northern hemisphere. Mosher glanced at the map in his hand. He couldn't help but curse. F***CK, the location of the virus hive actually coincided with the location of the dragon ruins. In other words, this virus hive was built on the dragon ruins. He tried to use his telekinesis to explore the virus hive. As a result, he discovered that his telekinesis could only detect the surface of the virus hive at most. There seemed to be a barrier on its surface. His telekinesis couldn't explore it at all. Mo sure shook his head. It seemed that he could only let his zombie puppets explore it. This virus hive was formed in the stadium. However, the surrounding doors had been sealed by Sanguisurincus. If he wanted to enter, he would have to use brute force. However, if he used brute force, he would definitely be discovered by the strong mutant zombies guarding the virus hive. Fortunately, at this time he saw one of the sarcomas squirming. Then, a strong mutant zombie jumped out from the sarcomas. "I see," Mo sure secretly said. Then he controlled the level 10 strong mutant zombie and jumped onto the roof of the stadium. Then it jumped directly into one of the sarcomas. After the zombie puppet jumped onto the sarcomas, it slowly sank in. A moment later, it completely passed through the sarcomas and entered the stadium. Mo sure could see the situation in the virus hive through the zombie puppet's perspective. He saw that the entire virus hive was blood red. The stadium's former lawn, stands, corridors, railings. There was nothing that wasn't red. And it was covered with fine Sanguisurincus. If one looked carefully, they would find that these weren't Sanguisurincus at all, but formed by small arms. On the surrounding walls, through the dense Sanguisurincus, one could see thousands of human corpses. Some only revealed a twisted and ferocious face. The eyes on the face were still open. Some of them only had a broken arm or a leg that was riddled with holes. And some only revealed half of their buttocks. In the center of the stadium, there was a huge blood pool that occupied the entire stadium ground. It was different from the other blood pools. In the blood pool here, the blood was more viscous, as if it was about to solidify. In the blood pool, there were a few strong mutant zombies that were bathing. In the blood pool, there were constantly blood-red tentacles that climbed onto their bodies. Among them, there was the horned mutant zombie that had just escaped. These strong mutant zombies, one by one, saw the zombie puppet come in. Although they were a little surprised, they didn't investigate further. After all, in their view, this zombie puppet was their own kind. When the horned mutant saw the zombie puppet, its eyes revealed a look of surprise. How could this guy be exactly the same as itself? Under the easternmost stands of the stadium, there was a crack that was more than 1 meter wide and more than 10 meters long on the ground. Around the entire crack, there wasn't a trace of Sanguisurincus. The ground near the crack was also a normal khaki color. It looked out of place with the entire virus hive. When Mo sure saw this crack, his heart moved. Could it be that this was the entrance to the dragon ruins? After pondering for a moment, he didn't immediately go in. Although there were no super mutant zombies here, it seemed very safe. But after all, it was the virus hive. It was better to be careful. It was best to let the zombie puppet take the risk first. Chapter 110. The location of the dragon ruins was called Inko. There was once a rumor of a dragon falling here. The Xinjiang Times once reported that in early July 1934, a live dragon was found lying on the shore and seemed to be injured. People used reed mats to set up a shelter and water it. A few days later, it was raining heavily and the dragon disappeared. On July 28, a dragon fell from the sky. It destroyed 3 ships, destroyed a factory, overturned a train and killed 9 people. Later, people found the dragon 10 kilometers away from the estuary of the Liao River. Its scales filled 2 large baskets. Its voice was like a cow's cry before it died. After that, dragon bones were found several times. Mo sure remembered that the dragons described in these basic descriptions all looked like the Wuxia divine dragon. He didn't expect that there would be a dragon ruins of a western dragon here. However, at this time, there was a virus hive above the dragon ruins. Mo sure had already explored everything in the hive through the zombie puppet's perspective. However, with his caution, he naturally couldn't directly kill his way in. Instead, he used his mind to order the zombie puppet to launch an attack. The zombie puppet received the order and didn't roar to the sky. In Mo sure's view, zombies and mutant beasts would roar a few times before each attack, as if they were afraid that others wouldn't know that they were going to attack. This was really stupid. Since they were going to attack, of course they had to be unexpected and silent. Therefore, he ordered the zombie puppet not to make any sound before attacking. The zombie puppet could only forcibly suppress the urge to roar. It walked towards the blood pool. Then it jumped into the blood pool. It directly grabbed a strong mutant zombie. with a fierce force. Hiss! The strong mutant zombie was torn into 2 pieces. Then it grabbed another strong mutant zombie. Hiss! That strong mutant zombie was also torn into 2 pieces. When the rest of the strong mutant zombies saw this, they all quickly jumped out of the blood pool in horror. Their grayish-white eyes were full of panic and doubt. Zombies would only kill each other when they were fighting for food. Other than that, they almost never fought with each other, especially in the blood pool. All the zombies were in awe of the blood pool. When they were in the blood pool, they were all careful and didn't dare to make too much noise. But now this zombie had torn apart 2 zombies, which made them angry and puzzled. Emosure saw that these fellows did not even dare to resist in the blood pool. He couldn't help but smile. Since you don't resist, just lie down obediently and enjoy yourself. Then his mind moved again. The zombie puppet rushed towards a nearby zombie and pounced on it. However, right at this moment, in the blood pool, a thick arm formed from thousands of tiny tentacles suddenly stretched out. He directly grabbed the zombie puppet's arm. The zombie puppet was also very tough. When one of its arms was grabbed, it stretched out its other arm, grabbed the arm and pulled it hard. Crack! It actually tore off its own arm. A pale white bone could be seen at the fracture. Blood spurted out of his mouth. Even though zombies didn't feel any pain. Not to mention tearing off his arm, even if he were to cut off his little brother, he wouldn't even blink an eye. But with this tug, the scene was still unbearable to watch. Then it pounced on the strong mutated zombie again. Anyway, it had 6 arms. Breaking 1 or 2 wouldn't affect it at all. It grabbed the strong mutated zombie. The strong mutated zombie was torn in half. It was also at this moment that the blood pool seemed to be angry. It kept churning and the blood pool bubbled. In the next moment, hundreds of arms emerged from the blood pool. These arms quickly grabbed the zombie puppet's limbs and body. With a fierce force. The zombie puppet was directly torn into dozens of pieces. Blood rained down and broken limbs flew. Emosure sighed in his heart, those who tear people will be torn apart by others. But then he shook his head. If people really tore it apart, wouldn't he be in danger? In short, there was something strange in this blood pool. Then wouldn't it be fine if he stayed away from it? Thinking of this, Emosure retracted his wings. From a height of 100 meters, he directly fell to the ground 100 meters away from the nest. Boom! The ground under his feet suddenly cracked inch by inch. A shockwave suddenly spread out. All the Sanguisurincus on the ground within 50 meters were directly broken by the impact of his smash. Around the nest, the strong mutated zombies guarding the nest saw a human suddenly fall from the sky. They were all stunned. One had to know that this was the nest. It was almost impossible for a human to come here. Even a level 10 hunter among humans would be torn to pieces by the Sanguisurincus extended from the nest before they could get close to it. How did this human come here? But at this time they didn't have time to think too much. Since a human dared to invade the nest, then die. Hundreds of strong mutated zombies had all reached level 10. As they roared, they pounced on Emosure. Emosure opened his mouth. Roar! A shocking roar came out from his throat. Bang 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 bang. Almost all the level 10 strong mutated zombies were halfway through pouncing. Then it exploded. Blood rained down and broken limbs flew. This was the upgraded corpse roar technique. With a roar, as long as it was a strong mutated zombie below level 10, it could be directly killed. Emosure did not care about this, his eyes focused on the nest. At this time, there were already hundreds of Sanguisurincus as thick as a thigh, like a giant python winding towards Emosure. Emosure did not care about these Sanguisurincus. His right arm quickly thickened. Chapter 111. The virus hive seemed very powerful, but its main function was to create powerful mutated zombies. It was actually just a huge building. At most, it had more Sanguisurincus than ordinary buildings which could be used for attack and defense. But in front of Emosure, this little bit of defense was completely like paper. After splitting the hive with his claw, Emosure's eyes turned blood red. He looked at the hive with his blood-red demonic eyes. He saw that the zombie aura above the hive had gradually dissipated. Obviously, the hive and the blood pool inside, including those powerful mutated zombies, were all dead. Emosure used his telekinesis to condense another zombie puppet with the surrounding zombie flesh and blood. But this zombie puppet was only the height of a normal human. Emosure ordered in his mind, "Go to the entrance of the dragon ruins and explore." The zombie puppet immediately entered the broken hive and walked toward the entrance of the dragon ruins. But when the zombie puppet walked to the entrance of the dragon ruins, it seemed to hesitate for a moment. Then it jumped into the entrance. Under the entrance it was 1,000 meters deep. The zombie puppet landed in a dark tunnel, intending to move forward. But after walking for a while it slowed down. After a while its legs went soft and it fell to the ground. There was no more sound. Emosher frowned slightly. Then he created another zombie puppet and sent it into the dark tunnel. The result was the same as before. The zombie walked less than 100 meters in the passage before it fell to the ground again and no longer made a sound. Emosher felt strange. Why did he hang up all of a sudden? He used his telekinesis to carefully examine the bodies of the two zombie puppets. He found that the cells in their bodies seemed to have shrunk. They were already cold. It was exactly the same as the zombies he killed with the Sky Splitter Dragon Spear. He suddenly realized something. The Sky Splitter Dragon Spear had a strong restraining effect on the zombie virus. And this was the dragon ruins. Could it be that the dragon's aura or something had a restraining effect on the zombie virus that caused the two zombie puppets to die? In fact, Emosher was right. It was indeed the suppression of the virus by the dragon's aura that had caused the death of the two zombie puppets. Moreover, the reason a virus hive was formed here was to suppress the draconic ruins. However, all these years, the Sanguisurincus of the virus hive had been trying to explore the draconic ruins, but to no avail. Emosher paused for a moment and took out the virtual sentry tower. They were directly placed in the virus hive. Under his probing, the area within a radius of 5 kilometers was quite safe. Only then did he enter the broodmother nest. They arrived at the entrance of the dragon ruins. As soon as he arrived here, he actually felt very comfortable. It was like a person who had been busy all day and finally returned home at night. Emosher thought to himself, this must be because I have the Titan dragon genes in me. Using his telekinesis, he found a huge cave at the end of the dark passage. However, because the distance was too far and the terrain was limited, his telekinesis couldn't detect what was below. At this moment he no longer hesitated. He jumped straight into the crack. Since he was home, he naturally didn't have to worry anymore. Not long after Emosher entered the draconic ruins. A hurried sound suddenly sounded in his mind. Beep, 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 beep. This was the alarm from the virtual sentry tower. He hurriedly used his telekinesis to investigate. With this investigation, his expression couldn't help but change slightly. In the virus hive, dozens of Sanguisurincus with a diameter of more than a meter crawled out from the ground in the blood pool. These Sanguisurincus surrounded the blood pool that had a huge gully. They formed the walls of the blood pool. Dozens of thick Sanguisurincus laid in the huge gully at the bottom of the blood pool, forming the bottom of the pool. These Sanguisurincus were actually repairing the blood pool. Soon the blood pool was repaired. Thousands of Sanguisurincus crawled out from the surroundings, and a large amount of blood seeped out from each Sanguisurincus. They were injecting blood into the blood pool. In less than 10 minutes the blood pool was filled to the brim. Those Sanguisurincus began to repair the remaining walls again. They repaired the 10-meter-wide crack that Emosher had made with his sharp claws. At the same time, dozens of Sanguisurincus wrapped around all the corpse fragments of the bullhorn zombie and dragged them into the blood pool. In the blood pool, bubbles began to appear with a gurgling sound. When Emosher saw this scene, he felt a faint sense of unease in his heart. But he wasn't worried. This was the draconic ruins. Even if they wanted to kill him, they had to be able to enter. At this moment, Emosher first withdrew his mind from the draconic ruins. He had already used his telekinesis to investigate that there was no danger in the draconic ruins. It was really just ruins. He walked briskly along the dark passage. Although he couldn't see his fingers in front of him. But with his level 10 telekinesis, he could clearly see everything around him even with his eyes closed. So he smoothly arrived at the stone cave. He saw that the stone cave was huge. At a rough estimate, it was probably tens of thousands of square meters. There were many stalactites on the top and around the stone cave. Obviously, this cave had been formed a long time ago. Around the walls of the cave, he could occasionally see a few huge claw marks that were a few meters wide and dozens of meters long. Emosher's heart was filled with excitement. Giant dragon claw marks. Although he had been injected with the Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer before. But that was only the enhancer. This was the first time he had seen something left behind by a giant dragon. Even if it was just a few claw marks. He came in front of the claw marks and reached out to touch the ancient claw marks. He imagined what kind of giant dragon it was and how sharp its claws were. Its scales shone with a metallic luster. Its dragon eyes shone brightly. Emosure couldn't help but be fascinated. After a moment he withdrew his mind. He continued to investigate his surroundings. There should have been an exit at one end of this huge stone cave. But at this time the exit had already collapsed. It seemed that if he wanted to go back, he had to go through the crack that he came down from before. But then he didn't find anything. This was only the ruins of the dragon's Denver. If an ordinary person saw that there were no treasures here, they would definitely be disappointed. But Emosure wasn't disappointed at all. As long as it was past 12 o'clock, he would sign here. There would be treasures. There would be skills. There would definitely be upgrades. He looked at the watch on his wrist. It was 11 o'clock sharp. There was still an hour. Then he would wait here for an hour. At the same time, above the dragon ruins. In the blood pool in the virus hive. The blood pool was like a pot that had just been boiled, bubbling with blood. One could vaguely see that there were dozens of pieces of flesh in the blood pool. Countless tentacles stretched out from the flesh and slowly connected the flesh and blood together. Then the flesh and blood began to grow more blood vessels, bones and muscles. Finally, it slowly condensed into a human outline. Chapter 112. Emosure sat cross-legged on the ground of the dragon ruins. He closed his eyes and rested, waiting for the arrival of midnight. On the surface he looked like an old monk. Calm as water, without any ripples. In fact, he was very excited. He was like a virgin who was dating a girl for the first time. When he got the map, he had always wanted to sign in at the dragon ruins. Now that he had finally arrived at the dragon ruins, he could sign in another hour. It would be a lie to say that he was not excited. When he was meditating, he would open his eyes every few minutes to check the time. Damn, only 3 minutes had passed. Who said that time was like water? Who said that time flies? Come out, I promise to kill you. Anyway, he had nothing to do now. At the same time, in the blood pool above the dragon ruins, the outline of the human figure was gradually becoming clearer. Although there was no skin, facial features, hands and feet appeared. It was not like the level 10 mutated zombies from before, which were easily 30 to 50 meters tall. It was only the size of a normal human. It didn't grow any strange barbs, horns, pouches or anything like that either. It just had no skin on the surface of its body. In the blood pool, countless thin arms reached into its mouth, nose, ears and eyes. It looked very scary. The process was very slow. It seemed that the blood pool was carefully creating a zombie that was completely different from the other zombies. At the same time, in base C1 it was chaos. Hundreds of strong mutated zombies rushed into the base. One had to know that there were only a dozen hunters left in base C1. How could they be a match for more than 100 mutated zombies? These mutated zombies were not afraid of rockets, nor were they afraid of bullets. The only thing that could cause them harm was the genetic weapons of the hunters. However, a hunter's genetic weapon would still need to hit their head in order to kill them. However, in the face of these 100 strong mutant zombies, the hunters were completely in a passive state. But the mutated zombies did not seem to have any intention of tangling with them. After repelling the hunters, they began to scatter around the base. They grabbed 2 humans and ran out of the base. In just a few minutes, more than 50 people had been captured. In a room in the residential area, Yang Kong and his daughter hid in the bedroom, not daring to make a sound. However, right at this moment, boom, the door was blasted open by a huge force. A strong mutant zombie broke in. Then the bedroom door was blasted open. Yang Kong was greatly shocked. This scene was very similar to nearly 10 years ago, when the zombies attacked the residential area. However, at that time there was a mysterious expert. But now the mysterious expert was no longer here. In a panic, he hurriedly tried to protect his daughter. But the strong variant zombie grabbed him by the shoulder and flung him away. Bang. His body smashed into a wall. Crack. Following a crisp sound, 3 of Yang Kang's ribs were instantly broken. At the same time, blood spurted out from his mouth. His left leg was also broken. Dad, Yang Kang's daughter screamed. That strong variant zombie no longer paid attention to Yang Kang. She grabbed her daughter, turned around and jumped out of the door. Little Yen, Yang Kang endured the great pain of his broken ribs and screamed. He supported his body with both hands and crawled out of the door. Little Yen, he screamed at the night outside the door. However, only his daughter's screams, which were getting farther and farther away, responded to him. Yang Kang's head drooped down weakly. In the zombie farm, Happy hid in his room and did not dare to move. After a while, a figure suddenly appeared in the yard of the zombie farm. It raised its head and sniffed. Then it jumped out of Happy's room. It kicked the door open. On the other side, Old Lee was shocked when he heard the sound. He quickly roared, "Happy!" Holding the crowbar, he was about to come out of the room. The strong variant zombie saw Happy in the corner of the room, and there was a hint of joy in its eyes. It reached out to grab Happy. However, at this moment, a fiery red light suddenly lit up on Happy's body. The moment the light lit up, the shock wave spread out instantly. The strong variant zombie was hit and flew 100 meters away. It crashed into the pig shed opposite, broke through the wall and flew to the training ground outside. Those pigs immediately snorted and fled outside. "I can go out and have fun again. Brothers, let's go." On the training ground, the strong variant zombie got up at this time, a little confused. Another strong mutant zombie jumped over and let out a roar. "What's going on?" The strong variant zombie that was blown away roared, "I don't know." Then it got up and was about to escape. However, in Happy's room, the fiery red light directly broke through the roof and reached 100 meters in the air. The next moment, it turned into a 100-meter-long dragon condensed by flames. This flame dragon was so bright. It reflected the entire base's sky red. Roar! The flame dragon roared to the sky. The dragon's roar resounded throughout the base. All the humans heard this dragon's roar and felt a great shock. And the more than 100 strong variant zombies heard this dragon's roar. Their bodies trembled violently. The next moment, they didn't care about catching people. They turned around and fled out of the base. On the training ground, the two strong variant zombies were the closest to it. Hearing this dragon's roar, endless fear rose in their hearts. Then they quickly turned around and fled. However, the fire dragon in the sky folded its wings. It swooped down toward the two zombies. When it was 50 meters away from the two zombies, the dragon opened its mouth. A flame spurted out. Boom! The area around the two strong variant zombies within 100 meters suddenly turned into a sea of fire. The flesh on the two strong variant zombies also turned into ashes at an extremely fast speed. Even their bones only lasted for a short 5 seconds. 5 seconds later, the bones also turned into ashes. This was the dragon's breath. The dragon's breath was not an ordinary flame. Even metal and stone would turn into ashes in this dragon's breath. The fire dragon flapped its wings and rose into the air again. It flew back to Happy's room. Then it turned into a fiery red light again. It instantly shrank back into the dragon's breath pearl on Happy's body. Happy was stunned on the spot. After a long time, she took out the walnut-sized dragon's breath pearl. The flame in the pearl seemed to be a little dimmer than before. She looked at it for a long time and said excitedly in her heart, "Brother Emo." Back then, when Emosher left, he left behind this pearl and asked Happy to keep it by his side. She didn't know what this pearl was used for. She just thought it was beautiful. Today she finally knew. This turned out to be something used to protect herself. She stared at this pearl for a long time. Her beautiful eyes flashed. Brother Emo, Happy missed you. Oldley had just walked out of the room. Seeing this scene, the crowbar in his hand fell to the ground with a clang. He never thought that he would see such a scene in his lifetime. And the people in the entire C1 base also gathered at the corpse farm. Almost everyone's heart was filled with shock and disbelief. They could understand that the mysterious powerhouse was powerful and his psychic power was strong. But what was with the fire dragon just now? Magic? Taoist technique? Magic? This was completely beyond their understanding. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.